Welcome to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid. A set of conversations about our government, our politics, and the kind of country we aspire to be. And now, here's your host, Edwin Eisendrath, on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
All right, everybody. We have so much to talk about. I'm going right into it. Yesterday, Trump met with Hungary's autocratic ruler Viktor Orban in the White House. Orban, the autocrat whose democracy-destroying methodology was studied and made part of Project 2025. Most of that meeting was about letting Orban continue to import Russian oil without sanction. That's how much democracy matters to this president. The meeting came, after all, just days after voters across the country delivered a clear and loud message. We are concerned about our future. A good life is increasingly unaffordable in blue states and in red, in big cities and in rural counties. We blame Donald Trump for failing to help. Americans want government to do its job, and we want the folks we elect to step up and get it done. Look, in the face of that clarity, Speaker Johnson ordered the House to remain out of session for a record-setting 8th week. Over in the Senate, that body refused to pass a Democratic bill that would have reopened the government if expiring health care subsidies were extended just a year, giving voters the opportunity in the next election to decide whether they should be extended permanently. Nope, they didn't do that. And, of course, instead of reading the room and mending his ways, Mr. Trump blamed everybody else and told Americans to go hungry, threw a party for his rich friends, met with Orban to give a gift to Putin, and then left Washington to play golf. Seriously? Look, anger and chaos at the Social Security Administration now threatens the timely delivery of the program itself. This is what this shutdown has caused. Reporters at Wired obtained meeting notes from a call with the agency's field offices last week. Social Security staffers, like, many in government, are expected to work but won't be paid during the shutdown. Some can no longer afford the gas and the parking fees to get to work. The agency had to close an office in California because it no longer has the staff to keep it open. And those who are left face a huge backlog. The administration was a Doge target, the Social Security Administration, and it hasn't recovered. One staffer told that call that the public is waiting 2 hours in the reception area, an hour to an hour and a half on phones just to get through. Social Security is in jeopardy because of this shutdown and this administration. And you know what? The nation's air traffic controllers also are expected to work without pay. And the agency, enters this shutdown understaffed and overstressed by, Doge. Now the Trump administration's ordered a 10% cut in air traffic at 40 high-volume airports. Places you all know: Chicago, Denver, Atlanta, Dallas, Fort Worth, Los Angeles. Look, cancellations are already wreaking havoc with businesses and causing incredible stress to families trying to unite for the holidays. Get home for Thanksgiving. And you know what? These airports also handle cargo. Businesses now expect delays in shipments to further stress supply chains already hammered by Trump tariffs. Do you know who remains unaffected by these FAA cuts? Billionaires. Because there's no reduction at the private jet airfield, so they can hop their G650s and go to their secret islands. This is the administration we're dealing with. And on top of terrible, there's morally reprehensible. And here, of course, I'm talking about the intentional cessation of SNAP, food benefits for those who need them. And the liar-in-chief, Donald Trump, told America just a few days ago, I'm going to quote here from his post, "I do not want Americans to go hungry just because the radical Democrats refuse to do the right thing and reopen the government. Therefore, I have instructed our lawyers to ask the court to clarify how we can legally fund SNAP as soon as possible." Liar. Because since that post, both the court, one court and an appellate court, have not only said SNAP benefits can be paid, but they must be paid. And is Trump paying them? Nope. He's appealed those rulings to the Supreme Court. And now he says, and I'm going to read him again, SNAP benefits, which increased by billions and billions of dollars during crooked Joe Biden's disastrous term in office, will be given only when radical left Democrats open government, which they can do easily and not before. Okay. At a time when Americans are worried about Social Security, wondering how to get to their families during the holiday, terrified about their own ability to afford food, using their votes to plea for change, the President of the United States is telling us that the only thing that matters is destroying his political opponents, no matter what it does to the rest of us. No matter what it does to the rest of us. The official website of the U.S. Army garrison in Bavaria, in Germany, published shutdown guidance on their webpage. It included a list of German food banks soldiers could go to for food because, of course, our soldiers are also ordered to work without pay. And after German media reported that American soldiers were using local food banks, the site was pulled down. Wait, what? U.S. troops have to rely on local food banks? That's not just terrible for troop morale. It also damages America's relationship with the host countries who, after all, established those food banks for their own population. And what does it say about us? A country with more food than any country in the history of the world. All of this comes at a time when the military establishment has been culled in a purge, and the proud tradition of a nonpartisan military is under attack by Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump, who continue to tell troops they must prepare to deploy to American cities. You know what? Americans see the precursor of this invasion in the lawless behavior of ICE and CPB on streets in Chicago and other big cities, and we don't like it. This is where we are after Tuesday's election. And at that meeting yesterday, sitting next to Viktor Orban, Donald Trump said Republicans should kill the filibuster and reopen the government. But he added that then Republicans can pass legislation to guarantee they would, and I'm quoting him here, never lose the midterms and will never lose a general election. Pass legislation so they never lose an election. Okay, I took a message from Tuesday's election. The president took a different one. The message we sent, we're in trouble. We want our government to get back to work. The president didn't like that message. So instead of doing the job he swore to do, he and his minions, they are doing what they can, working as hard as they can to make sure that soon our votes don't count. Do not feel thrilled by Tuesday's election. Feel determined, because it is the start, but it is not the finish. These guys are determined that your votes will never count again. And our country, our government, is falling apart in their hands. All right, everybody. I'm thrilled to be back and to be joined by Joe Weinbanks. Or say I'm back and I'm thrilled to be joined by Joe Weinbanks. It's more what I meant. You know Jill. She's a former general counsel to the Army, former Watergate prosecutor, sister-in-law podcaster, and a great explainer of our nation's legal battles with Donald Trump. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Edwin. How are you today?
Good. Hey, before we get into the show, you and I both spent our morning at a memorial service for a remarkable Chicagoan. Do you want to say a word to everybody about Fred Ford?
Yes, it was remarkable. I unfortunately only know Rebecca. I did not know Fred. And I said to her afterwards that I was really disappointed that I didn't know him because he was so remarkable, although it's not surprising given how remarkable his son and daughter are.
Yeah.
And I mean, did you know him?
A little bit, because Rebecca and I went to college together, so I've known him for a while. And you know, I mean, Fred was a trailblazer in America, a black man who broke every kind of barrier in his life, and had
worked
enormous
for women
success.
too.
Yep.
He tried to get women into the Union League Club when he was president, and it happened a few years later, but it takes a start like that to make it happen. So good for him.
Well, and Jill, a few years later it happened because a guy named David Orr and I wrote the ordinance in the city of Chicago to make it happen.
I didn't know that, but one of my law school classmates was one of the lobbyists for that, Stephanie Canwood. She worked really hard. Yes. Did you know her? Yep. Oh, my gosh. What a small world this is. Holy cow.
Well, I hope the world of people who get stuff done is actually not that small. But it was fun to work with everybody and make those changes. Yeah. All right. Well, let's turn
from doing that.
Yeah, well, it needed to be done, right? Let's turn from great people and great things that are happening to the more miserable things that are going on. Well, actually, I think there's some great things. Like, can we start with sort of updating everybody on the ICE cases in Chicago and L.A., because Judge Immergut in Portland, a Trump appointee, Judge Sarah Ellis here in Chicago, and Judge Robert Gettleman also here in Chicago have all taken a look at what's going on. And you know what? They're in agreement.
They are. And I live in Evanston, so I am witnessing the horror of ICE. And I just posted on the show notes for this week's Sister-in-Law a Chicago Tribune article that has links to videos that will depress everyone who watches it, but I think depress them in a way that will motivate action. And I walked from the memorial to a new parking lot and walked to a friend's house and was handed by protesters a whistle that I should wear, and I will, in case I see any ICE agents. It is horrible what's happening here, and the courts are saying there is no emergency. There is no grounds for this. The evidence of the violation of the order to not use non-lethal weapons, pepper balls and gas against peaceful protesters is being violated. And the head of the command here in Chicago came to court, testified, and lied, said, I don't use violence. And then there was a video shown of him wrestling a woman to the ground. They are doing everything that's easy. They're not going after criminals. They're going after people who may or may not have a green card, who may have violated the entry requirements, but have committed no crimes. They're pulling landscapers out of front yards in Wilmette yesterday. They pulled a preschool teacher who was entering the classroom, pulled her out, and she has permission to be here and to work. They don't care. They are using the Supreme Court's power that said, yeah, you can use these criteria. Brown skin, speaking Spanish, near somewhere like a Home Depot, yeah, those are grounds to think that someone could be illegal. That isn't. And now we have a ruling that says you can't make warrantless arrests, but they are making warrantless arrests. And the judge said, no, you're going to have to stop doing that. And you're going to have to undo the damage you've done by releasing the people you've illegally arrested. That's the country that we are now living in. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to get worse. It is going to keep getting past 1939 in Germany, which is where we're at now. I don't want to see it go any further, and I want to reverse it.
And the judges agree with you. The administration is resisting at every turn what the judges say. And they also, they arrested an IDOT worker in Illinois who was just doing her job. She's a citizen, but she is, of Indian heritage. They just looked at her, they arrested her. And what did they do when they arrested her? They asked her for her citizenship status, and they asked her, what did she think of Mamdani? That's what they did.
Wow. It is so bad. And at the same time, they're offering $50,000 to recruit people to ICE. Mm-hmm. They're sending them to training without the proper vetting. They're now finding that people who are in training one, don't have the physical qualifications. They can't do the number of push-ups and pull-ups. But they also have criminal records. They have criminal records that would disqualify them from serving in the ICE. And yet they are the ones who are arresting people in ICE.
Yeah, but Jill, look, I watched some of the deposition of Greg Bovino, the man in charge, because they made his deposition public, and he just says, we've never abused our power. No, I've never seen an incident where we have used force on people without, of course our people are in jeopardy. We're in danger all the time in Chicago.
Right.
And none of it's true.
Exactly. And the same is true. The most remarkable case was the acquittal on misdemeanor charges of Sean, I can't think of his last name, Sean, who threw
ham
a
sandwich,
subway.
Sean. Yeah.
Exactly. A salami sandwich, I think it was. And the agent said, I was in fear, and the sandwich exploded on me. I smelled of mustard, and there was a piece of onion hanging from my vest. And the video shows none of that is true. The sandwich was hurled, now becoming the hurl of sandwich. And it landed whole, wrapped up, completely undamaged on the ground. You can see the video. He lied. He said it exploded on me. And he's in the wrong line of business if a sandwich scared him. Really,
and he's in the wrong line of business. But the villain here is Jeanine Pirro, because she's now acting as the U.S. attorney. She went to get a criminal indictment. The grand jury said no. So she went for a misdemeanor, which unheard of, and still lost. And if this doesn't scream abuse of government power, I don't know. It's hard to imagine anything that would convince somebody.
It's interesting because we discussed this on the Sisters-in-Law today, and at first we all thought that this was obviously prosecutorial misconduct for having brought the case, and that it was jury nullification because they said, no, this just isn't a crime. But now, if you analyze what the elements of the crime are, this was a lack of proof. There was no evidence of a forcible attempt to injure someone or a capacity to injure someone. So that really makes a big difference. Is they just don't have the evidence. I think the same is going to happen with Comey. He's going to be released. And I'm not sure whether he'll get the dismissal on vindictive prosecution or selective prosecution, but he will get acquitted for sure. There will not be evidence to support what's going on. The same will be true of Brennan. I think there's a lot going on. Letitia James will be acquitted. And so this is prosecutorial abuse. And he brought in Lindsay Halligan because the legitimate prosecutor said, no, there's not enough evidence. We can't indict. And so he got fired and replaced by a woman who would do anything he asked and did. And that's wrong.
And Jill, I'm so confused. The rule of law is so important. It's been so badly undermined. But also, just the mechanics, they have managed to put more junk in the machinery because now it turns out some of these people who have been acting as attorney general, the courts say they never had the authority to have the job in the first place. Right.
And that could, of course, impede any prosecutions on anything they brought, whereas in the certain of these cases, Lindsay is the only one who signed the indictment because no one in her office would. And she's had to bring in, I think it was from North Carolina, prosecutors to handle the case going forward because no one in the office with any experience is willing to pursue the case because it's just not a legitimate case. And it's something, when I worked at Justice, I was so proud to go into court and to say, on behalf of the United States. And I watch what's happening now, and I am ashamed. I can't imagine going to court now and saying, on behalf of the United States. And I think some of these people are going to end up disbarred. So certainly at the higher levels, I mean, Jeanine Pirro and, I mean, of course, it's a ridiculous appointment. Anyway, Pam Bondi, yes. I mean, yes.
I want to offer another view, because I think what the administration is doing is appalling. And they're not going into the court and really saying on behalf of the United States. Those words are coming out of their mouth. But what they're really saying is on behalf of Donald Trump. And there are lots of people still in the Justice Department. There are even people that were hired when Trump was in office in the Justice Department. There are even judges that Trump appointed who take their oath seriously and will not do this. And at the same time, this horror show in Chicago, whether it's in the suburbs or in the city, you know, in every neighborhood of ICE, as bad as it is, have you ever seen the people of our city pull together across neighborhoods like this to be handing out whistles and to be willing to use them and to go run out of your house to stop ICE from kidnapping somebody off the street, or to go to neighborhoods that have been badly economically hurt by these guys to go eat and spend money? I mean, I just think the city is, like the rest of America, we are saying no to this stuff, and saying it with courage and determination.
With courage and action. I mean, it is remarkable to see. There was one incident on Asbury, and where the ICE car deliberately jammed on its brakes to prevent the car that was following it to warn people that ICE was there, to crash into the car and do more damage to their own car than to the ICE car, and then dragged the driver out of the car, beat him, pulled him to the ground, hit him in the head, handcuffed him, while they were being taped doing this, because the neighbors were out blowing whistles and yelling. They discharged a canister of gas while children were trick-or-treating on Halloween night. And they had like 4, 5, 6 cars. It was hard to tell because some of them were moving. And all these armed, camouflaged, masked agents terrorizing the children in the neighborhood. This is just wrong. And then they're detaining people in Broadview, which they have boarded up all the windows, which is, of course, a violation of the fire code. But because it's a federal facility, they're not subject to Broadview's code. And the conditions there are now so bad that the judge ordered them to make it sanitary, and is now going to go visit to see if there's any compliance. And so far, are you willing to bet on whether there's compliance or not, or whether it's, you know, it'll be cleaned up for the one day the judge comes, and then it'll go back to being the unsanitary, unsafe conditions that it is? And as Judge Ellis said, the violence is unconscionable. So the violence, the cruelty, people, I mean, landscapers are being pulled off of their jobs. And some of them, I am sure, have proper papers, but they're not asking. If you don't speak good English, that's grounds. And that is just so wrong in America. It's amazing. I just heard Ali Velshi reading from his book. He was reading this morning, but I saw him do it at an event in Chicago about his father running for office in Canada and losing, but saying, I'm doing it because I can. The law allows me to. And I don't expect to win, but I'm going to set the pattern so that someone will eventually win. And then years later, he ran again and won. And I was almost crying listening to that story. It was lovely. I mean, it was really, I can't wait to read Allie's book. It's going to be a great read.
And it's the kind of courage that we need here right now, and that we are seeing from people here right now. But it takes that every day in the face of this onslaught from the Trump administration. And I'm stammering a little, Jill, because on the one hand, we have a well-funded ICE and Customs and Border Patrol out there doing damage to America every day. And we have, at the same time, incredibly stressed government public servants in the FAA, even in the Army, not getting paid, being told to go to work and not getting paid, or in Social Security, and cracks are showing. These very important things that we need are starting to not work, and then
it's a deliberate effort,
and let them be hungry.
Exactly. While he gives his great Gatsby party, I mean, his timing couldn't be worse, but it's deliberate. This is not an accident. He wants people to suffer. He doesn't care. You saw the video of him in the Oval Office. Someone collapsed behind him and other people rushed to help. And he stood there and looked away. You wouldn't think he would help at all because he doesn't have any empathy. He doesn't care about humanity. He really is fine with, okay, our planes will be canceled and delayed. His won't be. So what does he care? All of his people are now getting their own private planes while people are starving. He's ordered to release the SNAP funds. And he says no, and then he's forced to back off, saying, okay, I will, but I'll only do half. And the court says, yeah, okay, we're going to not force you to do it yet. We're going to review it first. So he's getting away with it while people are starving. And again, you mentioned how people are coming together. I have never seen so many people bringing boxes of food to our local churches and to our city hall and to our, in Evanston, the Levy Center. People are to the high school, the Evanston High School. Our neighbors are coming together, donating food so that people who are otherwise not going to have any. And I tried to carefully select things that that were canned, that people could keep for a long time, but that were healthy. I mean, I didn't want to just give them cookies. I wanted to give them vegetables and other things. It's what we should all be doing, but we shouldn't have to. Our government is there for a reason, and I don't know why they're not doing their job. And I think the Democrats' proposal that was, I think I've lost track of time, last night, they made a proposal of saying, look, extend the SNAP benefits for a year, and then we'll reopen the government. And he's like, nope, you have to do the reopening first, and then we'll talk about it. And you can't do that. Shame on you if you accept his promise that he'll negotiate it. He'll never do it unless he does it first. You cannot give in to him. There's no way.
Absolutely right. Or that snake, Speaker Johnson. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Jill, yesterday, before he flew off to Florida to play golf, he met in the Oval Office with Viktor Orban.
Yes.
You know, Orban was the model for Project 2025 and how to wreck a democracy, and he met with him ostensibly to let Orban continue to buy Russian oil without sanction. So that tells you one thing. But he then went on and said, look, Republicans should get rid of the filibuster. And you know what? I'm fine with that. But he said, and then they should change the laws so Democrats can never win an election again.
Right.
Like, okay, we just won an election, and the message was, we're worried. We want the government to do its job. You're not doing the job. Could you please focus on doing the job? And his response to that is to meet with an autocrat, to make life better for Vladimir Putin, and to say we're going to pass laws so that you can't ever beat us in the polling places. This is terrible.
Exactly. It is. And the GOP has now filed suit against California for its redistricting plan while applauding the Texas redistricting. And all it is fairness. If they're going to do it, we have to stop just letting them do it and saying, well, we'll take the high road. I believe in the high road. I don't believe that throwing a sandwich at an ICE agent is a peaceful protest. I would rather that we use our voices and signs rather than throwing a sandwich. But you can understand why someone would throw a sandwich or yell obscenities at the ICE agents when you're witnessing them pulling people out of cars or off of lawns. It's too horrible. And then you contrast that with his throwing this lavish party and meeting with Viktor Orban, who is the role model along with Putin, and then decorating the White House like it was in Russia. I worked in Russia for a while, and I can tell you for sure that that's what it looks like, all that gold and blazoned stuff. That's what he's making everything look like. And he lies about everything. He lied about, I'm not going to touch the East Wing. I'm just going to add on a ballroom. And then it's demolished. And what happened to all of the historic aspects of that East Wing? The furniture, the artwork, the desks. I mean, just think about everything that's historic.
I'm sure he's selling them. I'm sure he's got a marketplace somewhere and he's selling them. Are you kidding me? And the money is going right into somebody's crypto wallet.
And what do you think he's doing with the new ballroom? I interviewed two people about that. One was Susan Scher, who I'm sure you know.
Love
was
Susan.
Michelle Obama's chief of staff. And I said to her, well, how often did you need a ballroom for 1,000 people? And you know what her answer was? Never.
Never.
Never. Yeah. The whole point of a diplomatic dinner, of a state dinner, is to have a small group get together where you can do diplomacy and talk. If you have 1,000 people, that's not doable. So if it's never, is he going to rent it out? Are the people who paid for it going to get it for free twice a year, 5 times a year? What's going to happen? Is it going to be a storage room for 360 days a year?
His court, Jill, it's his court. They're going to, on nice days, they're going to sit on that cement patio. It used to be a beautiful rose garden, and wait for their audience. And you know, when it's colder, they will have this ballroom where they can hang out. It's a court, and it will be my prediction is should we not destroy this party in the next midterms and make the votes count? But if he should somehow prevail, then what we are going to see the biggest, grandest spectacle of a ball in honor of Vladimir Putin as its opening.
Oh, you're making me sick, but I just don't know why people aren't doing something. When I say people, I'm talking about Congress has abandoned its role. He's shooting votes with no evidence. You are right, Republicans. Yep. These votes being blown up, we have no idea whether there is any contraband on them. These could be phishing votes for all we know. We have no idea.
Even if they are contraband, Jill, right? Even if they are contraband, you don't get to do summary executions from the White House without some process.
Exactly. And no drug offense is a capital offense. So you can't execute people even if they went through a trial and even if it was proven that they were transmitting drugs to America. And they're nowhere near America when they're getting blown up. So we don't know where they're heading. We don't know what's on them. And if there is, by the way, drugs on them, what's happening to our oceans? I mean, somebody asked me that, and I was like, I never thought of that. But are the fish going to eat the water that has drugs in it?
If it survives the bombing, yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
Right, it's crazy. It's illegal. Yeah. It's illegal in American law. It's certainly illegal in international law. We are an outlaw nation where our president has switched sides in a war to support Vladimir Putin and has switched sides in a democracy to say, oh, you just had an election? I'm now going to work with Congress so that you never have one again.
Right, exactly. And I'm not going to have Congress come back into session so that the 218th vote could be cast to release the Epstein files, so that we now have Arizona has a district with no representation because Johnson won't let them come back because Trump said don't bring them back. And so Congress is not in session. Why are they getting a paycheck and the TSA agents are not? Think about that. Those members of Congress who aren't even in Washington, not only aren't they going to their offices, they're not even anywhere near them. This is a crazy time. It's crazy, crazy, crazy.
So, yeah, the Republicans in Congress are in the witness protection program and hiding. The Democrats are there. One congressman put a desk out in front of the speaker's office and is there every day so that anybody who walks by, she can say, look, here's what we should be doing. I love that. I mean, the Democrats are trying to hold hearings, but of course they don't have subpoena power. But they're there to work. The Republicans aren't even there. And I think Senator Kennedy, the Republican Senator Kennedy, yesterday said this shutdown isn't going to end until 2026. I mean, the American government is teetering. It's not going to be able to do its job. And
what would happen if that were true, Edwin? If it really went on for 6 months even? What's going to happen to America? I mean, there'll be no planes flying. There'll be no trials. I mean, what trials are you going to have? The court isn't getting paid either. What's going to happen to all the people who rely on Medicare, Medicaid, on SNAP benefits, on education, on schools? What's going to happen? The country will dissolve. Could that possibly happen? Could the Republicans be that insane?
40, I had these numbers. I don't know where I put them, but the numbers are huge of people who rely on these programs. I mean, millions and millions and millions and millions of people. And if we are hungry...
Well, SNAP benefits is 42 million.
Yeah, and Social Security is, what, 60 million?
Yeah,
right?
Probably more than that. I bet more.
Yeah. So once we start, and 250,000 people fly every day in America,
wow.
and so do a lot of goods, right? I mean, and these supply lines are already troubled because of tariffs. So if they force America to be in a place that is chaotic, right? Because if our federal government goes, we have chaos, and that is going to mean rising crime. It is going to mean desperation, and desperation brings out terrible things. So if we descend into that place, can he then say, oh, I really do need to send in the armies now? I mean, I don't want to be cynical about it, but there is a path that goes directly to you destroy everything. I
don't think you're being cynical. I think you're being
cautious.
Accurate. You're not cautious. You're being accurate in an assessment of, he does all these things. The provocation of sending in the troops, which have been barred so far, but his attempt at sending in, except in D.C. where they were allowed, is to cause people to react in a way that he can then say, look at these rioters. We have to get, Of course, they weren't rioters on January 6th. They were peaceful protesters doing violence. Patriots. Right.
And then became political prisoners.
From jail. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's why it is so important that we are seeing Americans take care of each other. That we are seeing the America that in the 1930s, despite enormous hardship, did not become a scene of chaos because real hardship, still we were trying to take care of each other. And I don't think we have lost that, Joe. I think we will not become the violent, barbarous place that he thinks if he destroys the federal government we will become. I think we are going to help each other in ways that he does not have the mind to even imagine. Because just like some of us are stunned all the time by how low he goes, because we just do not have the kind of evil creativity that can imagine where he's going. They do not have the generosity of heart to see what we're capable of.
I think you're right, and I think there's another element which I think that businesses, and I don't mean just the small businesses who are hurt by tariffs, and I do think the Supreme Court is not going to allow him to do the tariffs, but I think the big businesses are going to go like, I can't do business anymore. I can't get to meetings because I can't fly. And I think there are enough things going on, and I think a lot of people who voted for him who were for immigration control were not for immigration cruelty, and are seeing their friends and neighbors, people who work for them, being grabbed out of wherever they're working. And that people are going to start turning more and more against him. The election results on Tuesday were a clear sign that there is a mass movement away from Donald Trump and his whatever he stands for. And then you have, Fuentes and Tucker Carlson and what they stand for. And I think that they're going to lose some of their power, too, as people see what the implications of white nationalism and white Christian nationalism is. And that people are going to start going, well, you know, I could be next. And I'm warning people, if you live in Chicago, you're seeing it. But you could be in the town that gets hit next. He's not going to stop here. He's doing all the easy stuff. Let him go after people who have committed crimes, who are here illegally.
All said that's okay, right? But he's not interested in that. That doesn't spread terror. So, Jill, yesterday I talked on a different show to Senator John Tester, former Senator John Tester, a conservative Democrat from Montana. He got voted out by a MAGA surge in that state. And he pointed out to me that, while we're dealing with these issues, this attack of the federal government here, rural America is dealing with a different kind of attack, but an attack nonetheless, that farmers are seeing their markets disappear, not because of anything in the market, but because of decisions this government is making. They're seeing continued inability to fix their farm equipment because of rules that get in the way of them doing the work and supply chain problems. They're seeing their local hospitals close, their local schools shut down, and this is all directly related to the policies of this administration. So for the first time in a generation or two, we might be able to put back rural America and urban America into a coalition. And that would be, the attack on everybody is happening. It's not just an attack on you and me here in this metropolis.
Right, and it's not an attack on you and me, unfortunately. It's our friends and neighbors who might appear to have Hispanic heritage of some sort. But yes, the rural areas, aside from the farmers, anybody who lives in a rural area, their hospital is probably going to go away. Once they take away the funding, that's going to happen, and people aren't going to be able to, even if they could afford it, they're not going to have a hospital to go to. And they'll start seeing the results of what's going on and how he just doesn't care. He doesn't care. We've seen that for a long time. And unfortunately, mis and disinformation really has worked. And he can lie and lie and lie, and people still believe him. But when they start seeing him saying, oh, prices are so low, I'm doing such a great job, and they're going like, I just paid double at the grocery store. Yeah. You're not telling the truth. And it's going to come home to roost for him, I think.
Provided we have free and fair elections, it will definitely come home to roost. Yeah.
Provided that he doesn't normalize having troops patrolling, which is very scary. But if the troops are at the polls, people are going to be afraid to come, especially people.
I agree.
No matter what they're, I know people who are now carrying their passports to show their American citizenship. Oh, I'm at a friend's house. She just raised her hand saying, I'm carrying my passport. And she looks very, very American, I have to tell you. It's carrying their papers. A woman was just involved in a fender bender and started crying hysterically, saying, please don't call the police. And the woman said, why? And she said, I am on a green card. I'm here legally, but they aren't going to care, and I have 2 children in this car. If they take me away, even temporarily, what's going to happen to my children? And luckily, the woman who got hit by her said, go. It's not that bad a damage. I'll take care of it. Yeah. And that talks to your point of we're trying to help each other. We're trying to understand and make sure that we can protect the people who matter in this country, which is everyone. Everyone matters.
All right. On that topic of everybody matters, I have to ask you about your friends in the Supreme Court. Jill, they just said they wanted to hear a case to revisit Obergefell and gay marriage. That's not even an old case. These are almost the same judges who vote on it. Now they're gonna take that again. What are they going to do?
Well, because the court has always wanted to. They've said that for a long time. I have heard a really interesting discussion which said, when they got rid of Roe with Dobbs, they said, well, there's not really reliance on it because nobody says, I'm going to get pregnant because I can have an abortion. Whereas people who got married entered into a contract, they bought houses together, they adopted children together, and there has been some serious reliance. They moved to the place of one of the people involved in the marriage, and marriage is as old as this country, unlike abortion, which wasn't part of our early history. Marriage was. And so denying someone on the basis of their sex or gender, a word that the administration doesn't want us using, may not get overturned. I think that, am I being Pollyanna? Maybe. But I'm hoping that maybe that won't be undone. It's too important in our social life now, and people have relied on it in forming long-term relationships. So
why would
even though it's
the case?
Maybe to show that there is some humanity there, and they're going to not, and they haven't taken it yet, remember? So maybe they won't.
Right. Maybe they won't.
Maybe they won't. But, you're right. They probably will, and we'll have to see. It's how many people can they offend before they lose all credibility? I think we're at a stage where we need to have Supreme Court terms, and that every president.
I want to rephrase your question. I want to rephrase your question. How many cases we allow them to take after they've lost all credibility? Because this court has, I mean, really, when they got rid of the Voting Rights Act, I mean, let's see, they have a case. They have a case, right? They could finally get rid of the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And I mean, the Voting Rights Act is pretty simple, right? When we passed those great amendments after the Civil War that said the right to vote will not be abridged based on, race or former conditions of servitude, it says Congress shall make laws to enforce this. And then Congress did make the law 100 years late, and the Supreme Court's saying, no, Congress doesn't get to make those laws. We do. I mean, talk about a theft of power.
It's horrible, and more bad is coming. I mean, I think tariffs are going to come out okay. I listened to the arguments, and Neil Katyal was brilliant. He did such a good job. He was really brilliant. He's
May
an
it please
amazing.
The court, tariffs or taxes, I think is how it began.
A good summary.
Yeah.
But he had answers for everything they put at him. They really, really did. And Sauer didn't. So I just feel like taxes is clearly in the province of Congress. Now, will Congress cede that power? Will they pass a law saying, well, we're going to let the president? They're ceding their power of war. They're ceding their power of the purse. I don't know. I mean, we have to hope that we can hold on until 26 and take back not just the House, but the Senate, and then maybe do some good to move it forward. I still will hope that maybe some Republicans will see the value in the Democratic proposal of let's do the one thing we're holding out for, let's guarantee the provision of supplements for insurance, and then we'll reopen the government while we look for a permanent solution. But let's fund it for another year. 1 year, that's all that's being asked. And then, I'm old enough that I remember when there was bipartisanship and compromise. And compromise wasn't a dirty word. Democrats and Republicans felt that if they each gave up something and got something done, that was good. And I would like to go back to that. I think in Obama it went away. Carter, there was still some discussion between Democrats and Republicans. But by the time of by the time of Obama, Democrats and Republicans did not talk to each other.
No, you know that. Mitch McConnell said the night of Obama's election, he gathered the senators and said, our job is to make him fail.
Right.
Right? I mean, Mitch McConnell is one of the villains in this story. And one of the reasons why our government is as dysfunctional as it is, and now we need them to be functional. I mean, grave changes are happening in the world, and we need to be able to meet them. And the people are able to meet them, but our government is failing us. And that, I think, has authors. Some of them are on our side, but almost all of them belong to the GOP.
I would say almost 100% are GOP. I mean, yes, there are some Democrats who aren't doing everything I would like them to be doing, but they're a minority, and the power of the minority is zero. So they can't.
Right
really...
now, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm talking about our throughout since Obama. Yeah. I mean, if Management Cinema had stepped up, we would have had election protections as a matter of law by now.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And we would have the Epstein files if Congress would come back into session.
You know, I don't think we will get it when they come back.
Files.
I don't think we're going to get them, because I think they're using all this time off, enough pressure to get one or more of the Republicans who has said, yeah, I want to see them to back off. And I think they'll...
How about, do you think they're going to destroy them? I can't believe...
I bet they're going to destroy them, too. I think we will never see them.
If there was anything in there of interest, it's destroyed. I do not trust them for a minute. I always wondered why Nixon didn't destroy the tapes, and it's because he actually believed in the rule of law, but they don't. So I'm not hopeful. I want to see the Holman tapes. That's what I really want to see.
Wouldn't that be something? Yeah. Take the cash, put it in your pocket, and then have Pam Bondi say, well, I don't know, he didn't do anything wrong. I mean, this is the most lawless bunch. But they've run out of law. We've run out of time. Joe, as always, thank you so much. I know you had to rush to get here and even to use a friend's house in order to make this happen, so I'm very grateful.
Thank you, Edwin. I'm so sorry I didn't get to see you there. That would have been fun.
Yeah.
But you saw I was late. That's probably why you saw me, because I came in late.
Yep.
Oh, well.
All right, Joe.
Oh, well.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everybody, we're going to take a break for the news. And then I think I'm turning to Greg Pratt, a fabulous investigative reporter here in Chicago.
Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid, on WCPT 820.
Okay, everybody, I think we are back, and I am joined by Greg Pratt. He's a fabulous investigative reporter with the Chicago Tribune. He is so good. And Greg, Greg, are you on?
I'm here and
Greg?
Happy to be with you.
All right, hang on. I'm going to say something you don't know. Greg is so good that when I was the CEO of the city's other newspaper, the Sun-Times, I tried to get him. And I failed. He's now doubling as a war correspondent, covering what ICE and CPB are doing on Chicago streets. So, Greg, welcome.
Thanks again for having me. And I've heard rumors about that, but it's nice to hear it confirmed.
No, absolutely was true. I'm sorry it didn't work out, but look at the job you're doing. It's quite remarkable. Actually, you and a lot of people, I mean, Chicago's journalists have stepped up into this moment.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I appreciate the kind words, because I'm working hard and so are my colleagues. Obviously, I think the Chicago Tribune's work has been exemplary, and we've been targeted by the Department of Homeland Security because of it. But all of our peers are doing incredible work as well.
Talk a little bit about that targeting.
Well, the Department of Homeland Security has repeatedly been critical of our reporting, and specifically me and Laura Rodriguez's reporting. And we're both prominent Latino reporters at the Tribune, and they've criticized our reporting, said we were inaccurate, said we were unfair. At one point, they suggested that I was obstructing federal enforcement by tweeting that they were in Little Village doing raids, which of course is not I just said journalism is not a crime, and I pointed out that, and I would point out here that when the FBI raided Alderman Ed Burke's office, I reported that news as well, and that's not impeding the FBI search. It's kind of a ridiculous idea.
It's kind of like all of the ideas they have. Can we intimidate? Can we use the force of the federal government to make those who would hold us accountable back down? So Greg, tell me if I'm not wrong, but did you grow up in Little Village? Is that where did you spend a lot of time there?
I did. That's where I grew up, and that's where I've lived most of my life.
For those of you who aren't in Chicago and are listening, this is a very large immigrant community, Mexican-American community in Chicago, and one that has been targeted by ICE and the Border Patrol, targeted to such an extent that not only are individuals in jeopardy walking the streets, but that the commerce in that community is ground almost to a halt. Can you talk a little bit about the difference you see there now and, in former times?
Oh, it's night and day. It's people are absolutely terrified to go out and do their business. And, there's a lot of people that continue to do their business, but there's even more people that don't. So as an example, after church on a Sunday, you usually have a pretty busy crowd at a bunch of restaurants in Little Village. One of the more, prominent ones, busy ones. They've always got lively music and homemade tortillas at La Casa de Samuel. Cermak by Cermak in California. I went in a couple weeks ago right after church, which is prime time for the restaurant, and it was basically empty. And that's a story that you see all over the place because people are afraid of everything that's happening, and they're even the people that have papers are afraid that they're going to get hassled on their way to and from.
Yeah. I took people last night to Mi Tierra. It can hold 600 people, I think, in that place, and there were maybe 20. I mean, it's really heartbreaking, really heartbreaking.
Yeah, and it's really tough. And then, I oftentimes think about honestly, the courage of, like, the tamale ladies, the ladies that sell tamales all over the city, because a bunch of them are still out. Now, some have retreated and some are not necessarily out, but there's still a bunch of them that are still going out. And, for any listeners that haven't been down here to the Southwest Side, it's one of the hallmarks of the neighborhood is that you can go anywhere and get like a giant order of fresh fruit or corn in a cup for $5, and you'd be getting charged $20 at Mariano's, and it wouldn't be as good. But there's still. It's a complex story because there are a lot of people that are scared, but there's still people that are going out there, and I think those are some of the bravest people in Chicago.
Yeah. I'm confused, and maybe your reporting is giving you insights into this that I can't see. What do you think the government is attempting to do here? If they're attempting to go after the worst of the worst, right, and get the criminals, there's not really evidence that is what they're doing. What are they really trying to do?
Well, I don't think it's that controversial. They want to deport as many people as possible, and this is a, they feel very strongly about illegal immigration, but also generally immigration. They want to limit, meaning the Trump administration at the highest levels, they want to limit migration to the United States. And you can see that in their statements and in their policy announcements. Like they recently announced that they only want to let in, I think it was 7,500 refugees. Now, I may be wrong about that. I don't think I am, but I'm going off the top of my head. But they're very dramatically curbing how many refugees they're going to allow into the country. That part is unquestionably true. And they want to emphasize white South Africans as the people that they're letting in. So, they're letting in a pittance of people, and the people that they do want to bring in are white. And, part of that is that, I kind of roll my eyes sometimes when people say, well, particularly some people in the Latino community who are like, gosh, I just thought he was going to get rid of the criminal Venezuelans, but they're going after grandma and the Tamalera. And I'm like, well, Trump gave his speech talking about mass deportations while the RNC people were holding mass deportation signs now. All of that is a very long way of saying they want mass deportations. They're trying to get rid of as many immigrants as they possibly can. They're focused on brown immigrants, particularly in Chicago. Greg Bovino, the head of the Border Patrol here, who is always talking about this, likes to say, I heard him say recently that they've deported people from 30 countries, and I'm sure that's probably true, but their focus is on brown people in Chicago.
Yeah, Greg, I think they could have large deportations, even mass deportations, without gassing neighborhoods all over the city, without harassing journalists, without the tactics that we're seeing. I think there's an additional edge that is meant to intimidate cities and the people in them, meant to deliver a message that, resistance is futile. I mean, there's no reason to be parading around the city on the running board of a armored personnel vehicle, for God's sake. That doesn't help you deport anybody.
Well, on that, right before the operation started, the president tweeted that Chicago is about to find out what it means to have a Department of War, and posted an Apocalypse Now reference, which is a fabulous and horrifying Vietnam War movie by, I'm forgetting the director's name, Coppola. And it's not exactly subtle, and it's not – I remember I recently wrote an article about how, their focus is on mass deportations, and I'm not sure that they would object to that because that is actually what they're doing.
They go to court and they give depositions that we now know to be false, that the judge has found to be false. And I think they're telling stories from the White House about things that are happening here that are false, and we now know that the evidence is clear they're false. But one of the reasons why the country understands they're false is from not just the great reporting, but the photos, the photojournalism that's happening, and the social media photos that ordinary Chicagoans are posting. I mean, have you ever seen a group of people bear witness the way we are?
No, I think that we have a story on the front page of tomorrow's Chicago Tribune, which I encourage everybody here to look up tomorrow and read. And it's also online now, but it's in the paper tomorrow about the Chicago resistance. And, the people of Chicago have really banded together in a really organic way. You can see that with the whistles. You can see that with the signal groups. You can see that with people driving around, alerting people. I think one of the things that, Homeland Security, every time they tear gas a neighborhood, they always say that a bunch of agitators and terrorists, and they do use those words, came out to confront agents, and usually that's not true. Certainly the characterization is over the top. But, this is mostly neighbors coming out and saying, what the heck's happening out here? Because you bring in 10 vehicles and 40 guys to snatch up as many people as you can, it brings a commotion. I mean, there was a guy, a former Cook County State's attorney, who was confronting the agents when they tear gassed his block, and he was in his Blackhawks pajamas. So you have a really organic movement, and I've never really seen anything like it. It's we're living in a fairly unprecedented moment in American history where, and I don't want to be too dramatic because there have been all sorts of times of unrest and upheaval, but I'm not so sure I can find a good modern historical parallel for the president saying they're about to find out what the Department of War means, and then sending a bunch of mass armored men to snatch people up off the street, like whether, and by the way, that's not even a commentary on whether that's good or bad. It's just without parallel. It's just without precedent that I can think of in modern times. And so also without precedent is the reaction of Chicagoans, which is, we're not going to break.
Yep. Why do they say they need to be masked?
Well, they say that, that their agents get threats and get harassed when they're, when they're unmasked or when their identity is known. And I think that's one of the more profoundly disturbing things about this. So I wrote a story about them arresting a landscaper from Skokie whose family, he's got an autistic preschooler and a 9-year-old, a fourth grader at Chappelle Elementary. Thank you. At Chappelle Elementary in Lincoln Square. And one of the parents there was talking to me about how it doesn't feel like law enforcement proceedings. It feels like kidnappings. It feels like extra legal acts. And a part of that is because they show up in masks and they snatch people up. And I think that I understand where they're coming from, and so is everybody listening to this call. And, but the direct answer to your question is they say that it's a safety issue for them. And I say that that's, pretty unprecedented.
Well, we have been through this in America with policing for decades, and police get to be held accountable. Like any other agent of the government, accountability is a requirement. And anonymity means, among other things, we cannot hold them accountable for what they do. We don't know who did it. And that makes them above the law. And you know this from covering police in Chicago. We've spent generations and consent decrees trying to get policing to be, not because police are bad, but because policing's a tough job and it does go wrong, and there are some bad cops, and communities don't want to be mistreated by government force. So we say we have to hold you accountable. And that's not just Chicago, that's around the country. We hold law enforcement accountable. They can't hide behind masks. These guys, how do you hold them accountable?
I think that's a great question. And I think that, I think that's a great question, and I think that's one of the more concerning things that happens every single day is who is out there doing what to the people of Chicago, whether they have legal status or not. And for instance, there was a guy in Evanston who was pinned down and punched in the head a couple times by a Border Patrol agent. And, if he was a CPD officer, he almost certainly would not be masked, and he would have a badge with his name on it. That the Border Patrol agents do have on their uniform some kind of number, but it's hard to read, and sometimes they block it. And, that's also not a substitute for somebody's face or a badge and a badge number. It just isn't. And that's one of the more disturbing things about what's happening in the city of Chicago.
So Judge Ellis has tried to enforce rules of engagement, rules that allow the government to do the job it's legally allowed to do, but holds them to that and does not let them go beyond what they're legally allowed to do. But she's done it now, I think, twice. She had to do it a second time because the first time she did it, they were not paying attention, which is the most polite way of saying what I really think. Do you have any sense whether the most recent set of rulings are going to change the policies and procedures of CPB, Customs and Border Patrol, on our streets?
I think you're trying to get me in trouble with that question. And
okay, forgive me.
I'm teasing. I'm teasing. I think that first and foremost, I think it's fair and important to let give Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino the benefit of the doubt. He said that they will abide by the restraining order and by the rules that Judge Ellis put forth. And it would be wrong of me to say that I don't believe him. That said, they didn't exactly listen to the letter of the order last time, and I do think that it's also fair to question whether or not how seriously they're taking the judge's order. But in fairness to Bovino and to the Department of Homeland Security, they've said that they will follow the order, and while they appeal it and things of that sort. So we'll see. But there's and I know I sound like
Let me interrupt you there for 1 second, Greg. Hang on, let me interrupt there for 1 second. I appreciate that answer more than you know, because you said we'll see. And the answer is because of journalists in Chicago and because of the people here and their determination to bear witness we will actually see. If they don't follow the consent decree, then I'm sorry, it's not a consent decree, the order, you will report on it. People will shout about it, and they won't be able to do it in secret.
I think that is what I was trying to say while I was giving a stammering politician answer. So thank you for helping clean me up a little there.
There's another set of orders that have to do with the facility that people are being housed in just outside of Chicago. And this one was a case that was brought where people said, look, the conditions in this building are inhumane. It was never meant to hold people, and now it's being packed with people. And the judge said, I've seen the evidence. You have to make a lot of changes, and has ordered them made. But journalists still aren't allowed to go in there, right? And neither are, despite a law that says they should be allowed, neither have members of Congress been allowed in.
Yeah, and that is about to change. So this is one of the more concerning things about what has happened in Chicago, and obviously the list of concerning things is very, very large. But they've got a processing center that's supposed to be a temporary holding spot, and they're holding people there for very long periods of time, not letting them use the bathroom, not giving them water, giving them tiny amounts of food, denying them access to medical care and to their lawyers. And, there was a lawsuit about it, which I reported on, and so did my paper, and so did other people in the media, alleging that these inhumane conditions exist. And the judge in the case, the magistrate who oversees the discovery and a bunch of other stuff in the case, said that she's going to go there next week, probably next Thursday, to check it out. And I think that is, whether it's the judge going, and, she indicated that some people might come, it's not going to be a huge number, but that building needs to be checked out. The accounts that were shared with us through the lawsuit and through interviews with people are absolutely alarming. There's no question about that. And one of the things about the United States, one of the great things about the United States is that everybody has rights, including really bad people and people who are accused of really bad things. Of course, those two things aren't always the same thing. And people's rights are kind of being violated at that facility. Judge Gettleman ruled to that effect. And so yeah, that's a long way of saying that's been a real black box. I think they've even blocked off the windows. And, the outside world is about to get some look into it, and I suspect it's even though they've been ordered to clean it up, and they probably will do some cleaning it up, it's still going to be ugly.
Chicago is lucky because we have strong local news still. Not what we used to have, but it's still remarkable. Lots of the country no longer has strong local news, but the reporting that's happening here is holding the federal government to account. It is letting the world know what's happening here, and it is giving courage to the people who live here, because you're also reporting on what neighbors and citizens and residents are doing to help each other. I mean, and that, from, as you talked about, the guy in the hockey pajamas running out to help people in front of his house, to people delivering food to folks who are afraid to go out, to folks going to spend money in neighborhoods that are impacted, to parents gathering around schools to make sure kids are okay. This is one of the most important things that local news is doing for all of America right now. And I wish we could find a way to let other communities understand this to get local news funded again.
The short answer is I concur. The follow-up thing is we really are blessed in Chicago with a lot of really great journalists. And, I'm in these rooms. We are not ideologically motivated. We're just trying to get at the facts and what is happening. Why is it happening? Is it an abuse of power? Is it a proper use of power? What are the circumstances of everything that's going on here? And your listeners, some of your listeners know this, but in my normal time, I spend a lot of my time making mayors mad because my job is to ask hard questions of the people in power. And right now, the people getting the most questions in Chicago are the federal government because they're doing extraordinary things, and they have to give extraordinary answers to justify the things that they do, in the same way that we demand answers from Mayor Johnson about his budget or Mayor Lightfoot about what she has to say about the Italians or anything else.
Yeah. So Chicago journalists, for those of you who don't know, are trained. Look, if your mother tells you she loves you, check your sources. If you find a body with bullets going in, count how many are going out. There's just get the facts and make sure people know it. And Greg, since he mentioned he makes mayors mad, he wrote a fabulous book about Lori Lightfoot's mayoralty. I don't know if Lori thought it was a fabulous book. Greg, have you talked to her about that? It was a good book.
Oh, when me and Lori Lightfoot see each other, I say hello and she looks away.
Yeah. Well, it's a good book. All right, Greg, we are out of time, but I really appreciate your taking some time away from the enormously important reporting that you're doing every day now to tell a different audience about that reporting. Good Sun-Times guy that I am, would you take a moment and plug the Tribune and tell people how they can find your work?
Well, I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky at Royal Pratt, ROYALPRATT. Royal is my middle name. It's not some weird nickname I gave myself. And they should be subscribing to the Tribune. They should be subscribing to the Sun-Times. They should be subscribing to Block Club and as many outlets as people can subscribe to, because the work cannot be done for free. And we need to support our local media outlets. And, of course, I think that first should be the Tribune and the rest. But there's a lot of worthwhile places out there. And I'm really grateful for our readers, who are also, in a lot of cases, our tipsters, who give us information. And reporters are only as good as their sources. So they can also reach out to me on those platforms, or gpratt@chicagotribune.com. And I'm always looking for the truth.
Thank you, Greg. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, we are going to take a break, and then I'm going to put this local story in a more national context as we talk to David Neer about elections around the country next.
Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid, on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody, we are back, and I am joined once again by David Neer. He is the publisher of The Down Ballot on Substack. Look, The Down Ballot it's essential if you are, like I am, sort of deep into American politics. You can find anywhere who won governor's races. Fabulous governor's races we just won. But there were hundreds of races all over the country. And David, keeps track of all of them for all of us. He has just amazing data sets, things that if you're interested in this stuff, you want to know. So, David, thank you and welcome.
Well, thank you. That was a lovely introduction. We do try to keep track of all of the races we can at the down ballot.
So that means you have a different perspective than most other people on the election we just had. I mean, as I say, most people know we won some governor's races. Most people know that California, did their job and temporarily overrode their antipathy to gerrymandering to achieve a specific national purpose. But most people don't know how deep this current blue wave ran. So what were your big takeaways?
It ran deep. I mean, you said it, Edwin. You cannot overstate just how big an election this was for Democrats and what a repudiation it was of Trump, of the GOP, and of the MAGA movement, because it wasn't just those handful of marquee races like the governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey and Prop 50, which you were just referencing in California. This went deep down the ballot, and there were many, many other races that saw Democrats put up incredible numbers. And if I can, I just want to highlight a couple.
Yes,
in Virginia, it wasn't just the governor's race. Democrats also won the attorney general's race, the lieutenant governor's race, but they also flipped 13 seats in the House of Delegates, the lower chamber of the legislature there. And that was completely nuts, Ed. When they went into the election, Democrats with a 51-49 margin, and they're walking away with a 60 in Virginia. It really is astonishing.
It's hard to remember a sort of bloodbath like that in a state legislature. I mean, it's hard. I mean, there have been nationally, when Congress changes over, like it did when Gingrich won. But it's hard to remember a state legislative race that has been so lopsided.
It's funny you say that, because really the last major one on this scale that springs to mind was also in Virginia in 2017, once again, the first year into an unpopular Trump administration, and Democrats won 15 seats that year. But the thing I need to emphasize, Edwin, is that year, Democrats were starting from an incredibly low point. They only had 34 seats in this 100-member chamber. Right. So gaining 15 seats was huge, but, that took them to a rough parity. Now, to be able to gain another 13 seats on top of that just shows you how unpopular the GOP has become.
And now Democrats can govern in Virginia.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And we're going to see almost certainly the chance for voters to vote on something like Prop 50 in California to get a chance to redraw the map in Virginia to counter all of these GOP gerrymanders going on in Texas, in North Carolina, in Missouri, and elsewhere. And I don't think Republicans were expecting Democrats to fight back that hard.
Yes, because we hate gerrymanders. Because they are fundamentally anti-democratic, but we are there's a specific national purpose right now, and we are serious. They believe their own BS. They just did. They thought we were weak, and they were wrong. They find that, David, I was just talking before you came on to a reporter about what's happening on the streets of Chicago with the customers.
Oh, my.
They think we are weak.
Yep.
And they are behaving atrociously every day, and they're finding out we are not weak.
And they are soft. They are so soft. They tried to prosecute a guy for throwing a sandwich, exploded in mustard and onions. I mean,
which turned out to be a lie. It didn't explode. It landed still in the package. Right. Lying in court is a thing they do with regularity.
Probably still could have eaten the sandwich.
Somebody probably did.
Voters are showing that what Trump is doing is extremely unpopular, and they're super pissed about it. And unlike elite institutions where we've seen so many time and again just bending the knee for Trump, regular people are saying, hell no. People don't like being threatened. They don't like being treated this way. And they're having a very normal reaction of saying, no, you're not.
And this isn't just a blue city reaction. I mean, the folks, J.D. Vance, bless his heart, said, oh, well, this was just election in blue places. I think he forgot he actually had a relative running for mayor of Cincinnati.
That's right.
who lost.
Who got crushed, yeah.
Right? But like some of the bluest parts of Ohio, the reddest parts of Ohio shifted towards the blue. I mean, this phenomena. Talk about some of the places that are red.
I would love to.
Democrats did well.
I would love to. And I'm so glad you brought up that J.D. Vance talking point, because it's something that the entire GOP has adopted. And if they want to con themselves into thinking that it was just blue cities and blue states that went blue, so no big whoop, that's great news for Democrats. Because if Republicans are going to refuse to address their serious problems and their unpopularity and all the stuff they're doing that the American public hates, well, that's just going to make them even more likely to lose even bigger in 2026. So let's talk about a couple of examples. My favorite example was in Georgia. Georgia never normally has statewide elections in odd-numbered years. They had Virginia, New Jersey, but Georgia doesn't, except they had a couple of special elections for an unusual set of reasons for something called the Public Service Commission, the board that regulates utilities in the state of Georgia. 5-member board, all 5 Republicans on the PSC, and there were 2 seats up. And Democrats not only flipped those seats, they won those seats by 25 points. We're talking a swing state. We're talking a state that Trump won last year. And Democrats just showed up in massive numbers. Republicans seem to have no interest in turning out to vote. I can't recall a situation where you have a swing state putting up plus 25 for one party. And this is the first time in 20 years that Democrats have won a non-federal statewide race in Georgia. They've got some big races in Georgia next year for governor and for Senate, John Ossoff. If I were Republicans, they're going to try to dismiss this. They're going to say it was low turnout, special circumstances, whatever. They can dismiss this all they want. It's not good news for them.
Yeah, my reaction when I heard J.D. Vance say that was, he said, those are blue states. And I said, we'll take them. Sure. They're blue now. We put them in our side. You go fight. You go spend all your money in Texas because you're not going to win here. I don't think they will. I think they'll compete. They have plenty of money. They'll compete wherever they want. But false. Really false. I mean, this wasn't just depth. It was breadth too. Yeah. All over the place.
It really was. And
school boards.
Right.
The book banners they did not have a good day.
At the top of this segment, you said that we, track every race. There are some races that were even too small for us to be tracking, despite us being called the down ballot. But Democrats won in places they've never won. If you look at these races in, county legislatures in upstate New York and town councils in Connecticut, if you go on Blue Sky this past week, you'll see people saying, in my small town of such and such in northeastern Connecticut, which hasn't had Democrats in charge in 70 years, Democrats swept the city council and, the mayor's office. There are so many stories like that. I couldn't even keep up with them. So, yeah, it was truly at every level of the ballot, and also points to something, which is, it's an off year. And it doesn't get the attention of the midterms or a presidential election, but there's always tons and tons of elections happening in the United States. And this was the first big chance for voters to weigh in on Trump 2.0. And the verdict was resoundingly clear.
And we hear, okay, well, the candidates were talking about local issues. They were campaigning locally. They were doing what they should do, saying whoever's elected needs to be responsive to people who live here. That's not the same thing as saying, I'm running against President Trump. How do you know this was a repudiation of Donald Trump?
So we did see a fair number of ads in some of these races that were specifically targeted against Donald Trump. In particular, in New Jersey, there was a lot of hand-wringing about Mikey Sherrill before the election, and many polls showed a close race. She was the Democratic candidate there, and she ran a lot of ads tying Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican, to Donald Trump. And so, you had these pundits saying, Sherrill's pulling from such an old playbook. Is that really going to work? And she won in a blowout. She won by 13 points when, one conservative site had the polling average average of just +3 for Democrats, acting as though it was almost a toss-up. So, yeah, we do have some very direct evidence that voters were weighing in specifically on Trump, not just local issues.
What caused that polling problem? Did they really just think Democrats were going to show up in much lower numbers, and so they discounted what they heard?
I think that pollsters are often fighting the last war, and it's a difficult business. You're not just trying to interview the right people. You're also trying to predict what the electorate is going to look like the next year. And in 2024, the polls were, they did a pretty decent job, but to a certain degree understated Trump's support. And so you had also, following that, so many pundits talking about 2024 as some kind of durable, permanent realignment, that Latinos were now firmly in the GOP camp, that younger voters were abandoning Democrats, that black voters were abandoning Democrats. And so I think a lot of these pollsters decided to take 2024 as the baseline going forward, not understanding that the electorate was going to look very different in 2025. And that's exactly what happened.
So what happened with Latino voters and younger voters and black voters? What happened?
Latino voters, I think it really stand out because we saw many Latinos, especially Latino men, especially younger Latino men, go with Trump in 2024. And we have seen, based on a lot of evidence from this past week's elections, that Latino voters went racing back in the opposite direction. In certain towns and cities and counties in New Jersey, again, in particular, that are known to have large Latino populations, we saw huge swings back in the Democratic direction. And we'll get more sophisticated analyses in the coming weeks, more granular analyses. But it's not just New Jersey. Many other heavily Latino areas as well also moved back in the Democratic direction across the country. And Republicans were really conning themselves when they thought that this was going to be some kind of permanent shift, because it turns out people might say in the abstract, yes, they think that, folks who are here unauthorized should be removed from the country. But in practice, when it turns into villainous thuggery in the way that Trump has made it look, well, people don't like that.
Yeah. And young people, we saw an enormous surge of young voters in the New York mayor's race. But I wonder if it's true. Did young people, maybe because of New York, did young people start to register again in larger numbers elsewhere?
That's an excellent question, and I think we're going to have to wait a little while to, get the detailed analyses from the folks, at these big data firms that really drill into this stuff. But one thing we did see in the exit polling was very strong numbers for Democrats with younger voters. And I'm glad that you mentioned Mamdani. I'm from New York City. It's my hometown. I lived here my whole life. And watching his campaign was really something to behold, because he did the thing that Democrats have been so desperate to do for so long, which is energize and excite new voters. And it doesn't matter whether you agree with Mamdani on policy, you have to understand the way he spoke to people. And he brought excitement, and he made people want to vote. He made people eager to show up. It wasn't just a chore. It was a delight. And so that kind of enthusiasm and energy, and I believe it's because he ran a campaign showing how much he loved New York City, which was the exact opposite of Andrew Cuomo's campaign of crapping on New York City all the time. And combined with his focus on affordability, and affordability is a message that works literally everywhere. It doesn't from the reddest district to the bluest city, any and every Democrat can and should run on affordability.
Yeah. So let's talk about, the Republican machine took about 1 second to say after this election. First, there was the J.D. Vance thing. They only won in blue states. And then there was the more durable attack. See, the Democrats are all socialists. They all have they all hate Israel. They all are they've just gone overboard to the left, like 11 standard deviations. And this is who they are. They're going to groom your babies and give them AK-47s and send them out as terrorists because of look at what happened in New York.
Right.
Okay. With all respect to your lovely city, which I love, New York is not Topeka. It's not Virginia. It's not even New Jersey across that tiny little river. It's not such a tiny little river, but across the Democrats elected Democrats in different places, and it turns out it's a big tent.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And, I think that New York City mayoral elections get more attention than they deserve because they happen in the odd-numbered year. There are not a large number of marquee races. We had a ballot measure actually to move them to even-numbered years, and it failed, and I'm so disappointed at that. I'm like, stop focusing on us so much. There are lessons you can draw, sure, from Mamdani's campaign, but, there's this false dichotomy that's emerged of like, are Democrats going to be the party of Spanberger or the party of Mamdani? The answer is yes.
That's
you want
correct.
Different candidates in different places. Ruben Gallego, the senator from Arizona, he just won last year, very difficult race, even as Trump was carrying Arizona. And he was campaigning with Spanberger right before the election. And he said, look, Mamdani couldn't win in Arizona, but I couldn't win in New York. You've got to run the right person in the right place. And Democrats did a great job of that in 2025.
And this big tent does not mean we stand for nothing or we stand for everything. I think Democrats have been pretty clear that we stand for a kind of government that pays attention to the people who put us in office, that we stand for a kind of government that delivers for the people who put us in office, and that we don't want to work for the map makers and the money guys. We want to work for the people who put us in office. That alone is a huge difference between, gee whiz, I need to pave over those roses so I have a place for the folks who want to pay court to wait for me to see them, and I need a Putin-esque ballroom where the East Wing used to be, right? It's just not, there's such an enormous difference between Democrats and Republicans that I think. Well, so I'm going to full stop there and then say one more thing. For so long, David, the country has believed about Democrats what Republicans have said we are.
Yeah.
And Democrats, my friends, have believed it enough to campaign and say, I'm not that kind of Democrat. Oh, no, I'm not that kind of Democrat. I hope that goes in the ash heap of history. And Democrats say, you know what? My brother Mamdani, my sister Spanberger, we stand for people in a big, diverse country. And I'm going to stand for you, and it doesn't matter what these other guys say.
I think it might take a long time for us to get there, but I think the Democrats are moving in that direction. And I think that you are seeing these kind of fearless, particularly younger Democratic leaders standing up and saying, we reject the GOP caricature of the Democratic Party. We are going to stand for what we stand for. We're going to tell people what we believe, and we're not going to live in a defensive crouch all the time. And I hope that this election is a shot in the arm for that, because the thing I care about first and foremost from, issue number 1 to issue number 100 is the health of our democracy. And right now we have only one political party in this country that cares about democracy, and that's the Democratic Party. And Democrats need to fight like hell to save this democracy. And boy, I sure hope that they're feeling good after this past week.
Yeah, I hope we're feeling good, but not too good, because because yesterday in the Oval Office, Donald Trump sat with Viktor Orban, the architect of ending a democracy in Hungary. And among other things he said was, I wish we would end the filibuster so that we can pass laws so that we never lose again. That should scare everybody.
Absolutely. And Trump is not going to give up trying to rig the elections. But I do want to emphasize, Trump is trying to rig the elections because he's worried he's going to lose them. You don't engage in this pell-mell gerrymander push unless you actually are afraid of what the voters are going to do to you. And I want to emphasize, we talk about having free and fair elections. That doesn't exist on a binary. It's not either free or fair or unfree and unfair. And U.S. elections have always been flawed. They've always been imperfect, and they're more imperfect now than in quite some time. And Trump wants to make them even worse. But the fact of the matter is that the president only has so much authority over American elections. Elections are very distributed. They're run by the counties and the states and the cities and the towns. And so even the most determined autocrat in the White House could only do so much. And Trump, as we know, is a lazy SOB. So, I think that there are things he says he wants to do things like, never lose arrange things so that they never lose an election again. But that's much easier said than done.
I agree. But he has gone to his friends in the Supreme Court for some things that would be very damaging. Now, looking at the numbers that you've seen, I wonder if this is true. And a number of people have said it. When you gerrymander a district, you kind of want to break apart your opponent's sources of strength and spread them into like 30% of other districts, right? So that you have a big majority. But if you're going to wedge even more gerrymanders into an already gerrymandered state, you got to sort of put them back in at higher numbers so that a state that was 80-20 Republican in a district has to become 60-40 in order to wedge a few more Republican districts in there. Do you think, given what you've seen, that the gerrymander could backfire and a big Democratic surge could actually take out a bunch of these people who thought they were safe?
I think that, unfortunately, Republicans are a little too smart for that. And I want to draw a very important distinction. Mm-hmm. Let's look at Texas. Republicans are targeting 5 Democratic-held seats in Texas. I think it's very possible that their dreams of winning all 5 of those seats fall well short. In fact, right now, I would predict them to pick up 3 at best and maybe only 2. That said, they were very careful to avoid weakening their existing seats. So I think their gerrymandered dreams are going to fall short. I think it's unlikely to backfire on them. That said, your typical politician is very risk averse. They don't want to give up their turf. They don't want to give up the voters that are familiar with them and take on new turf. And so it might convince some other members of Congress in other states to say, hold on, let's slow our roll here. I don't want to put my seat at risk. Even if you could draw a super devious map, that keeps all these red seats red, politicians are going to be, they might not want to believe you after, the map nerds. The map nerds might be capable of doing one thing, but a politician might not believe them.
Yeah, right. They want as big a cushion as they can get.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So this last election, pretty awesome. A lot of it driven by anti-Trump antipathy and some great candidates and an incredible turnout. It creates a brand restoration opportunity for Democrats because on our side, we've run elections and the other side has run a 365 days a year branding campaign, right? And it doesn't matter. There's no election involved when they say Democrats are trying to traffic children in a pizza parlor. It's just like, it's like breathing for them to go try and destroy the brand of the Democratic Party. Is this a moment where Democrats have an opening to restore their brand as the one that you talked about, the only one that cares about democracy, and to make the connection between democracy and the functioning of government? Because if you believe in democracy, you work for the people who put you there as opposed to work for somebody else.
I think the connection that's really important to make is that between democracy and affordability. And you might not think, well, what do those two issues have to do with one another? And I think the way you frame it is by saying they don't care about affordability. And I can prove it to you because look at all the things they're doing. Look at Trump destroying the East Wing and putting up that Saddam-esque ballroom. Look at all the ways that Trump is running roughshod over our rights, snatching people off the street, putting them in, these horrifying holding facilities. And they're doing all of this and jacking up the tariffs. And they're doing all of this instead of caring about the crisis in the cost of living. Yeah. And Republicans
keeping the government even open. Right.
Exactly. And so it's about explaining to the public how misplaced the GOP's priorities are. And I think that Republicans, because they've just gone so off the deep end, they've made it easy for Democrats to make that case.
I completely agree with that. I think Mickey Mouse could win against a Republican. I'm too old to be running for office anymore, but if I were, I would have more fun than you can imagine taking it to these guys. My question, though, is Americans are now leery of political parties generally. Can Democrats restore their brand? I know the Republicans destroy everything. First, they destroyed the Democratic brand. Now they're taking a shot at the whole country, and they've certainly wrecked their own brand. Now, the question is, can we restore a governing coalition around a political party?
It's an excellent question. I think it's going to be determined. Yeah. But what I think that Tuesday's elections show us more than anything else is, the polling of the Democratic Party, the favorability of the Democratic Party obviously is in the dumps. But the reason why is because Democratic voters are unhappy with the Democratic Party, particularly congressional Democrats, because they're the most visible. Republicans are always going to give the Democratic Party a bad rating. Right. But the really interesting thing is that when the choice is between someone you're pissed at for not doing better, in other words, Democratic voters' views of the Democratic Party, and the guys wrecking the country, you're going to still go with the Democrats, even if you're not particularly feeling that warm about them. Yeah. 2026 is going to be a referendum in the biggest possible way on the GOP and Trump. And I think the important thing for Democrats to do is just get out of their own way. Just keep the focus on Republicans and Trump.
Yeah, and on American people, on what they're going through and what we hear from them every day and how we can help them and how the other guys have turned their backs. I mean, Donald Trump had the chance. People voted for him who were, hardworking Americans in every state. He had the chance to go to work for them, and instead he chose to go court the billionaires and to try and become one himself. And that's what he's done. And I think you're right. There's a reckoning to be had. David, tell everybody how to find your work. Tell everybody, give yourself a plug because we're out of time, and I want people to understand this.
Appreciate it, Edwin. So you can find the Down Ballot at the-downballot.com. You can subscribe for free. We come out 5 days a week, every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern sharp. We also have a weekly podcast that comes out on Thursday mornings, the-downballot.com.
Everybody, I strongly recommend it. Fabulous. Thank you, David, as always. We'll talk again soon.
It's a real pleasure.
Bye. All right, everybody, we're going to take a break for and then when we come back, I recorded an interview with Jen Bendery, who is the politics reporter for the HuffPost, and she's in D.C., so that's what we talked about. It was fabulous. That's coming up next.
You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid, on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. Jen Bendery is the politics editor at HuffPost. She covers Congress and the White House. We talked last time, right after she wrote a piece about the massive exodus of federal workers in the first few months of the Trump administration. Turns out, laying off and getting rid of, a couple tens of thousands of Virginians doesn't make them want to vote for your team. Who would have predicted that, right? Anyway, I'm delighted to have you back, Jen. Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Hey, before we get into the politics of the moment, Nancy Pelosi decided to dance off stage this time. You want to talk a little bit about her and her impact on the Congress and the country?
Sure. Nancy Pelosi, it's the end of an era with her gone. Well, she's not gone. She announced that she is not going to run for re-election. Mm-hmm. So she'll be here through November 2026. But her retirement is seismic. I mean, she was the historic, House Speaker, the first woman to ever be House Speaker. She's an incredible fundraiser for the Democratic Party. She's a master strategist for her party. She is easily the most effective House Speaker in modern history. You could probably go back further and make an argument that, I just don't know of a House Speaker who had such a firm understanding of the legislative process and the ability to count votes and to whip people into line. And she is, like her or not, she was an incredible House Speaker, and her imprint is on legislation that will affect people for decades. I mean, she has just left a massive mark on today's country with her hand in all the major legislation that's come to pass.
Yeah, like the Affordable Care Act.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. There's so many. I mean,
big, complicated.
The Affordable Care Act. There was the Dodd-Frank Wall Street reform bill.
Yep.
She led the push to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the military. There was the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which was the massive economic stimulus bill that infused $841 billion into the economy after during the recession in 2007. I mean, those are just some of the bills that she helped to usher through. She has routinely been one of his most formidable foes. She was arguably like the wall against him for 2 years when she was the House Speaker and he was president in his first term. She just blocked all kinds of extreme things that he wanted to do in Congress. I mean, I can't say enough about the effect that she's had. She's been in Congress since 1987. She's 85 years old, so I think, it's not surprising that there's been increasing pressure on her to step aside because people are ready for fresh faces in this Congress. But I will say that she has always seemed to make things happen on her own terms. In terms of bills she wanted passed, things she didn't want to happen in Congress. And as she exits the stage, she is also leaving on her own terms.
Washington names a lot of things after former legislators. You have office buildings and other things named after former House speakers. And I just think she has been, as you say, arguably the most effective House Speaker in modern times and maybe ever. I'd name the rotunda after her. And I know, right? I know that is a stick in the eye of the Republicans who hate her. But the institution has not had a more effective leader, and that should matter. There are buildings named after all kinds of people out there. She deserves a real honor, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that House Republicans would be, obviously they're not huge fans of Nancy Pelosi as her, her ability to get things done. But I think that if you ask them privately what they thought about her legacy and her effectiveness, I think even they would, even begrudgingly perhaps, have to give it to her that she's very effective. I mean, they may not agree with her policies, but she knows how to do the job very well, and she proved it for many years.
And just as an institution, she understood the institution of the U.S. House of Representatives, and no matter what your politics are, she made that institution an important one in America.
I would say that I think perhaps her most effective and well-known skill as her party's leader in the House was her ability to count votes. Nothing would ever hit the House floor for debate and vote without Nancy Pelosi knowing exactly where every single member of her caucus stood on the vote. She wouldn't bring something to the floor without having an exact vote count, knowing for sure where everybody was going to stay in their vote. And that you may not appreciate something like that as an observer until you saw what happened after she left. And Republicans took over the House. Not only did they have a fight with themselves over who should be their House Speaker, and that was an embarrassing series of failed votes for some of their own colleagues to be Speaker that dragged on for weeks. And when they finally did elect, at the time it was Kevin McCarthy, they went on to put bills on the floor that would fail by their own party's votes because going back to that ability to whip people and count votes, it just wasn't there.
Yep.
So these are some of the mechanics of the House that perhaps people listening to this or people in general don't pay that close attention to. As someone who is here in D.C. and watches this stuff very up close, it is remarkable the grip she had on her caucus and the ability to keep everybody in line on every major bill that hit the floor. You just don't have that anymore.
No, and she gave people their turns, and she helped people grow and understand the job. She was a terrific leader, just a terrific leader. All right, let's turn from Nancy Pelosi to something less terrific, because now the government shutdown is the longest in history, and Speaker Johnson has put his caucus in the federal witness protection program and has them hiding, not showing up for work and hiding from the public. I mean, what the hell, Jen? What is this about? Like, this is just disgraceful.
I mean, at its heart, the shutdown fight is actually pretty simple to understand. It's Congress's job to fund the government. That is their core responsibility, to pass a bill to keep the federal government funded. Well, they haven't been very good at doing that in recent years, and they've been patching together piecemeal bills to keep the government funded. And when the last one just ran out, Democrats said, hey, we're not going to vote to reopen, to fund the government until you, Republicans who are in charge, agree to tie that vote to a bill to extend soon to expire healthcare subsidies, under the Affordable Care Act that are going to expire at the end of this year for millions and millions of people. So we Democrats, are in the minority, but we can block a bill in the Senate, and we'll say that, we will vote to reopen the government as if you give us, you agree to tie that vote to a bill extending, to more money to make sure people's health care doesn't skyrocket. It is already happening. People are getting things in the mail from, who use the Affordable Care Act. They're getting, their enrollment has opened and they're getting, mail that says, okay, here's the new cost of your health care. It's maybe double what it was last month, or triple.
I know that personally. I have two of my young adult children are on the ACA, and their insurance costs doubled.
Yeah, it's extreme, and people some people can't afford that. Some people won't get it at all. And so the argument in D.C. right now, Democrats are saying we will vote to reopen the government if we tie this vote to a bill.
If you rescind your cuts.
Well, we extend the soon to expire healthcare subsidies because they're expiring at the end of the year.
Right.
And Republicans have said, no, we're not going to do that. We need to reopen the government, and then we can talk about that later. And Democrats are saying, no, we need to do it now because people are already getting their notices and healthcare costs are already starting to go up. We need to do it now. So that is the heart of the fight. Do you reopen the government and then talk about healthcare later, or do you reopen the government and also immediately extend those healthcare subsidies so people don't get walloped?
Now, Jen, remind me, because I think you've said it exactly right. There's one additional element, which is the Democrats simply do not trust the Republicans will keep their word about talking about it later. Because the last time they voted to fund the government, the Republicans came back and rescinded the spending that they agreed to, and the president I think illegally also withheld spending that he was supposed to spend. So they don't have a trusted partner to make that deal with.
No, they absolutely don't. And don't forget that the guy in the White House is also someone they don't trust because you never know what he's going to do. And he has demonstrated so far this year that he doesn't really care about the government falling apart. He's been completely checked out during the government shutdown. He went overseas for several days when Congress was in crisis. Like, he is not involved at all. And
he had a press conference about his ballroom.
Oh, yeah. I guess in the meantime, he was demolishing the East Wing, which appears, if not illegal, at a minimum, just devastating. And it's questionable, how legal all parts of that decision were.
Yeah.
But at the moment, D.C. is just stuck. Now it's just a matter of who is going to blink first. And every day Republicans come in and have a press conference saying they're here fighting for Americans. We must reopen the government now. And every day the Democrats come in and say we want to reopen the government too. We also need to make sure people don't get priced out of their health care right now because millions of people are about to get screwed.
Yeah. I mean, it's
just every day. It's a messaging.
It's a terrible thing for America. It's a terrible thing for federal employees. But the Republicans are saying, we're here. We want to reopen the government. But the Speaker of the House has said to his members, we're closed. You can't come in and vote. We're not scheduling any work this week. I mean, how do they think anybody believes them? And after 40 years of saying the Democrats love government and we hate it, how do they think anybody's going to blame the Democrats for this?
Well, I mean, the optics are one thing. There are no House Republicans in town, and a lot of the House Democrats are here, and they're making a point to show the public that they're here ready to work, ready to make deals, having press conferences and panel talks about health care. So I do question the the strategic decision to not have House Republicans in D.C. It just looks bad. But then beyond that, you can't forget that Republicans currently control the House, the Senate, and the White House. So this is a full trifecta of Republican control of the federal government, and they're not here. So it just feels pretty grim, to be honest. I follow this day in and day out. We're on day 36 or 37 by now of the shutdown, and I honestly do not see in this moment an end. There's no sign that they're close to even coming up with some kind of agreement, in part because they're just not willing to budge, but also to your point earlier that there's a real trust issue here. So you could have, this starts in the Senate. You could have some Senate Republicans say, okay, we promise, Senate Democrats, if we pass a bill to reopen the government now, we promise you we will bring up a bill tomorrow to extend the healthcare subsidies for millions of people. That does not apply to Republicans in the House.
Or the president who would veto it.
Or the president. And I honestly, I cut the president out of this more because, like I said earlier, I don't think he cares. And I say that as objectively as I can. I mean, just look at what he's been doing. He's checked out of this entirely. I think he's starting to realize that this is looking bad for him and looking bad for his party, and he doesn't like that. I did hear some murmurs today that there's some concerns among some Republican lawmakers that Trump, now that he was, a big loser on Tuesday after Democrats swept in elections all over the place, he potentially could try to cut a deal with Democrats and cut out Republicans in Congress. And that is something that worries Republicans, because it might just be him trying to save his own butt at this point.
Yeah, pretty soon he's a lame duck.
Well, and I will, he's got 3 more years as president, but I do think the elections on Tuesday, which we can talk about later if you want, but it was a Democratic sweep, and that only makes the lame duck aspect of his presidency become even more prominent. And now we're in this shutdown that makes him look bad. So, the pressure, I think he's maybe starting to feel the pressure himself directly because of Tuesday's elections and because he can see that people are blaming him for this shutdown.
Yeah, I mean, except for the 28% of America that loves him no matter what, he's the most hated person I've ever known in American politics by more people. I mean, that hated across the country, and you have to count me as one who's not on the side of the 20% who thinks he's great. So I love talking about those elections. Those elections were, as the president likes to say, they were beautiful. Oh my God, it was beautiful. You've never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it. There's never been an election like this one. And I think actually you might be right. I mean, every county that voted switched, moved towards the Democrats, swept statewide elections in Georgia, moved the reddest county in Ohio towards, many points in the other direction, won the governor races, won, the mayor of New York race. No matter what you think of Mamdani, young people love him, and so it's led to an expansion of the party as younger voters registered all over the country. And then there was California, a state that they voted, earlier. They don't like gerrymandering. They put together a commission and got rid of it, but they understood their mission, which was to temporarily allow it because there was a national emergency that had to be faced. I mean, I thought voters understood the situation pretty well. But you're in Washington. How do they? I mean, if you can find a Republican member of Congress, how are they explaining this away?
Well, I mean, perhaps you saw what J.D. Vance has tried to argue, which I've seen others try to say, which is everyone needs to take a step back and breathe. These were all blue states. These were all blue areas. All these wins were in Democratic majority areas anyway. So people need to stop,
Tell that to his stepbrother who lost in a race for mayor of Cincinnati in red Ohio. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what he's saying is simply not true. And it's like anybody who looks at where these wins happened and how big of a win they were, it's objectively true that everywhere these elections happened, it was red, it was purple, it was blue, and Democrats blew out every single Republican person on a school board, on city councils, in state legislatures. I mean, it was across different levels of local government and state governments.
Yeah, everywhere.
I'm sure that there's not every single, there were like 190 races or something. I mean, it was a lot on Tuesday that were local mostly. Mm-hmm. But it was by and large an incredible sweep for Democrats. And what you have to take away from that is that, okay, this is the first major election since Trump was elected president. And what does this tell you? That the backlash is here, and it's big.
It's big. There's so much that people in America don't like about what's going on. Price, he promised he'd bring prices down, and he said, I'm the expert at this. And prices are continue to go up and going up more. And people understand that that's related to his tariffs.
Right.
It's just that he's causing it. People want a president who cares about them, and in the midst of this turmoil, he's building himself a new bathroom and a gold ballroom, right? And putting gold letters on the Oval Office.
Well, and don't forget that I think it was the day that SNAP benefits were being cut, or perhaps the day before they were being cut nationwide or partially cut, Trump was down at Mar-a-Lago hosting a large the Great Gatsby-themed Halloween party, which couldn't have been more appropriate given the moment where it's this image of people dressed up as fancy, wealthy, highbrow characters at a Halloween party at Mar-a-Lago as federal food assistance is being cut for people all over the country.
Yeah,
that contrast, the Great Gatsby itself is like the perfect. You couldn't have had a more ironic themed party.
And then, Fitzgerald said they are careless people, careless with other people's lives, right? All these rich people. And that was certainly true of his crowd. They do not care. Our tax cuts paid for Jeff Bezos to have a wedding in Venice.
Yeah.
Crazy. Right?
Yeah.
So Donald Trump, he had a chance to say he won with working Americans voted for him, hardworking Americans voted for him because they thought he'd be on their side, and instead he's just on the side of the rich and famous, and wants to be in that crowd himself, and they're certainly eager to pay him off. They showed up, the head of Apple with a golden phone for him. And, they're willing to be corrupt and to corrupt our government. So maybe Mamdani was right. The rich and powerful just do not have the moral character to hold the reins of leadership anymore.
Well, what was also interesting from Tuesday is if you break down the demographics of who turned out and which way they voted, there's a clear theme of young voters and Latino voters this time around. And remember, Latino voters were big for Trump in 2024. In this last wave of elections on Tuesday, the vast majority of Latino voters that helped Republicans in 2024 either voted for Democrats this time around or they just stayed home.
Right. So
there's some switching going on right now.
And that's true for young men, too.
That's right. And young women as well. But if you break down the demographics here, the shift in particular with young men and with Latino voters turning out for Democrats is very noticeable this time around.
All right. So you're in a city that still has the National Guard wandering around. But they're not really engaged in law enforcement. What are they doing?
They are walking around areas that they've been posted at and just, taking laps, trying to avoid being, spit on or yelled at by residents.
What a waste of taxpayer money.
And I will say, I've seen them they're not like everywhere, but you'll see them every now and then. And they didn't ask to be here. They're not the same as ICE or DHS.
I'm going to get to that in a minute.
They're not law enforcement. People who are in the National Guard signed up for emergency situations to help the country.
Right.
And I feel bad for them. They're not here to hurt anyone. They joined the reserve to help people.
Right. And they're pulled away from their families. They're pulled away from their jobs.
Well,
to do this.
And Trump is using them in D.C. to try to intimidate people because they are walking around in uniforms and some with large guns because that's what they order them to do. I will say that there's the DC residents that I know want them gone. There's a lot of people here who are angry, want them gone. Why are you here? Get out of here. You're here to intimidate us, and we're not intimidated by you. Get out of here. I will also say that I try to talk to them when I see them, because I'm trying to understand what they think of everything. And a lot of the ones I've met are young men and women from like West Virginia or New Jersey. Some of them have never been to DC before. They're in their early 20s. Some of them are a little older, and they weren't prepared for people to treat them like the way they've been treated. Some of them seem very confused. They thought they would perhaps be welcomed. I don't know what they were told before they came here. But I've talked to them and said, look, just as one resident, I want you to know that, it's not personal. Like when people are literally spitting on them and telling them, go pick up trash, F you, get out of here. I recognize the split between what they are supposed to represent by being here, with Trump putting them here, versus the individual people.
Sure. They were told they were coming to save a city that's a crime hellhole. They were lied to.
That's right. And I mean, they show up at like little kid soccer practices that I go to. Yeah. They're standing out there with their big guns with like 6-year-olds kicking soccer balls around together. It's like, what are we doing? Why is this happening? Yeah.
So let me transition from that to the poorly trained, overarmed folks in ICE and Customs Border Patrol. Is there a sense? Is the conflict in my city, Chicago, showing up on the radar screen in D.C.? Because what's going on in our streets has been appalling. It's been untrained, overarmed men throwing tear gas into neighborhoods, shooting at priests, manhandling journalists, arresting American citizens. The other day, breaking into a daycare center, for God's sake, to whisk away somebody who had a 2-year-old in her arms. I mean, and Chicagoans aren't having it. They're out in the street, and not in organized protests. There's some of that, but spontaneous. Everywhere these guys show up, people pour out of their houses and businesses to try and protect each other. Is any of this showing up in the radar screen there in the nation's capital?
As in ICE agents being in D.C.?
No, as in what's going on in the streets of Chicago is appalling.
100%. I mean, yes. Trump, has made it very... He's always announced the next city he's going to dispatch ICE agents to, and he makes a big show of it because that's the whole game, is making a show of ICE storming into cities and scaring people and trying to get people, Chicago's situation is absolutely on the radar for people in D.C. We had our own round of ICE being here. I'm not even sure if they're still here. And it sounds like what's happening in Chicago is happening at a greater extent, to a greater extent than what we saw here, because for part of it, Chicago is just a lot bigger than D.C. But we had the same reaction here. We had residents spontaneously pouring out into the streets together and shaming ICE agents, filming them, holding signs they literally just made on pieces of cardboard and holding them up, shouting at them, telling them to get out. There's like alerts that have been sort of informally shared with people about like spotted, at this intersection, ICE, it seems like the same things are happening with Chicago residents too. It's this basic need, this basic sense of community just coming together because there's this horrible force of people trying to come into your community and scare you and take people and wear masks. And it is not clear how much of this is constitutional. I mean, there's masked, unidentified people rolling up in cars and kidnapping people. Like, this is unacceptable. So yes, what's happening in Chicago.
The nice judge said,
Yes.
Yep. Shocks the conscience, she said.
It does shock the conscience. And it's happened in D.C. to a lesser extent.
When does it shock the conscience, if they have any, of the members of Congress, so they put an end to it? This attacking America's cities cannot possibly be good politics unless they really think, Jen, that what they're going to do is get us used to it so they can storm polling places on Election Day and say, oh, look, we're going to stop illegal voting, and then take ballot boxes. I mean, that is what most of us are worried about, because there is no reason for this show of force, this blatant, very aggressive, very provocative behavior by the federal government in our streets.
Right. So I'm reluctant to assume that's where we're going, not because I don't think that this administration would try to do that, but because there is a level of incompetence also operating amid the aggressive agenda here. I don't know where this is headed, but I also think that what we've seen so far is people in cities that are raided by ICE standing up and pushing back very loudly.
I agree. I mean, I'm not asking you what Trump will do. Who knows, right? I mean, nothing's beneath him, but their ability to get stuff done is limited. I'm asking you whether this horrific behavior in America's cities is going to shock the members of Congress enough for them to put an end to it. They could. The emergency's over. They could raise their hand and say, no emergency. You can't do it.
Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen with Republicans in Congress until it affects their own districts. And for the moment, of course, Trump is directing ICE agents into Democratic areas because that's the whole game. He's trying to intimidate Democrats in Democratic cities that he perceives as his political enemies. So he's not going into Mike Johnson's district or John Thune's district, state. He's specifically directing ICE agents into Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Chicago. Yeah. I think
soon
Boston,
to be New York.
Yeah, I mean, you can name all the obvious targets here, and that's intentional because he's trying to target Democrats.
I hope he learned Tuesday how this is working out for him.
Well, I mean, he's certainly, what's interesting about Tuesday's elections is Trump's first response to this drubbing at the polls was a tweet that he posted on his own social media site, Truth Social. And he said, tonight's elections wouldn't have been so bad except for there's two reasons why this happened. Because of the shutdown and because I'm not on the ballot. And this is what his message was, trying to basically say, like, Republicans in Congress and the shutdown, I blame them for all the losses at the polls, and also I'm not directly on the ballot. So therefore, I had nothing to do with this. But the irony, of course, is, all of these elections were about him.
And not a single Republican in Congress said so, right? No. Everybody knows it. But they want to sit out there on that concrete slab where those beautiful roses used to be and wait for their turn to come in and have their audience with the king. And they can't wait to get their invitation to this Kremlin-like facility that they're building, this gold-gilded ballroom next to the White House. I mean, it just is so offensive to American history and tradition, what these guys are up to. And Americans, we aren't stupid. No one in this country is dumb enough to buy this through the next few years. We're going to have a very tough time, Jen.
Well, I think it's important, too, to not forget that a lot of these Republicans in Congress aren't all in on what Trump is doing. They're scared of him.
Then they should stand. I don't care.
They're scared of him because they fear that if they go against him, they're afraid for their safety. Yeah, because that's where we are now. I'm not saying that this is an acceptable response, but I'm saying the reality is many of these Republicans in Congress are afraid to cross him. They're afraid of their people threatening them for crossing dear leader in the White House. They're also afraid that if they cross him, in addition to threats against their own safety or threats of retribution of some kind, that Trump will put up a a new Republican candidate to remove them in the next election. They're terrified of Trump. I'm not saying that that's acceptable, but that's the reality.
You and I've run out of time, so we're going to leave it there that Republicans have no spine. They'll send other people's children to war, but they're too scared to stand up and tell the truth. Everybody read Jen Bendry's work. She's at HuffPost. Just terrific reporting about what's going on in Washington. You heard she talks to everybody, including those ICE agents, to find out what's really going on. Jen, thank you. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
This is a WCPT 820 Heartland Signal News Minute.
I knew that when Trump came back, he would come after me.
That's Miles Taylor speaking to WCPT's Richard Chu. While serving in the first Trump administration, Taylor anonymously wrote a New York Times op-ed titled, "I am part of the resistance inside the Trump administration," and later, when he had left that job, published a book titled A Warning.
Part of my warning for 7 years was that if he was reelected to a second term, Donald Trump would abuse his powers for revenge. And then, true to form, on April 9th of this year, he proved my point, as he always does. And he issued an executive order in the Oval Office directing his agencies to investigate me for, in his words, treason, which is the highest crime envisioned by the Constitution, a crime punishable by death. What was my crime? My crime was criticizing the president.
For WCPT 820 and Heartland Signal, I'm Andy Miles.
You're listening to WCPT 820, because facts matter.
Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid, on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody, I'm taking your calls at 773-763-9278. Jim, kick us off.
Yeah, hi, Edwin. First of all, the filibuster. That's a Spanish term meaning freebooters. And filibusters were like vigilantes in whatever historical they'd get together, in whatever prize they could figure out they could take. But in this term, what is the point of bringing up the filibuster when he has the court captured? He's got all the other things captured, and they've got Project 2025, and they got the Heritage Foundation, and they've got all these lunatics. But what they fail to see is they can't rule in perpetuity. There's never been a Homo sapien organization to run in perpetuity. The problem is we got to suffer under this in Chicago. I can't even tell you how absolutely I can't even take it. I can't take it. I can't take a look at this maniac with the haircut. I can't take not only that, but how many people have died in custody? Maybe 20, 25. 20 was the last, and that was a month ago. How they died, we don't know how they died. Where they sent to, we don't know where they were sent to. We don't know how many people have been sick with heart attacks, et cetera, et cetera. Watching kids getting tackled and old ladies getting tackled on the street. Do you ever think you've seen that, Edwin? It's the city of Chicago? Seriously.
No. Or the United States? No.
No, I never thought I'd see some moron brutes tackling people and throwing them on the ground. I mean, for what? I mean, first of all, take immigration. It was 125,000 immigrants we let in. That was like carte blanche every year. So Trump has cut it down to 7,500. And he's letting every Afrikaner from here to any Afrikaner, any white Afrikaner comes in on the shuttle. I mean, they come in with everything. They don't need papers or anything. That's how insane this is. And then you've got crazy Musk, who just got a Christmas bonus. You saw his Christmas bonus, $1 trillion. He was the one that tore apart our government. They let him into the White Office. For what reason, God only knows. And also, Frontline had a picture. He's the face of the Nazi party in Germany. They got him and Trump, all the TikTok videos in Germany of the Nazi party there. They've got this nut on and Trump on. Trump in a Santa Claus outfit and Musk. They might as well have a mustache and a whip. I mean, it's what universe are we in here? But I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it because there's no way. Let them come and get the ballot boxes and all that stuff. They'll never get away with it. I don't care how many army guys they got. Everybody. Well, Franco was well funded by the fascist parties. I mean, Hitler and Mussolini pumped him up with planes and guns and all that stuff. So he lasted for 40 years, but they went right back to Democratic elections. I mean, so they had to suffer for 40 years. So maybe we have to. I don't think we'll have to suffer that long, Edward. Anyway, have a good week. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, 40 years. The Soviets lasted 60, I think, maybe longer, 70 years they lasted. The mullahs in Iran have lasted a long time. Chinese Communist Party shows no sign of going anywhere. When fascists take control, it can be very hard to dislodge them and enormously painful, and at human cost that I really hope we never have to contemplate. But yeah, we're in a tough spot. Dave, what do you think?
Hey, Edwin. Yeah, I just read a story where yesterday a federal judge in Oregon had ruled that Trump's administration failed to meet the legal requirements for deploying the National Guard to Portland after the city and state sued in September to block the deployment. The ruling from U.S. District Court Judge Karen Immergut, I guess, a Trump appointee, followed a 3-day trial last week in which both sides argued over the protests at the city's U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement building met the conditions for using the military domestically under federal law. So, score one for us.
Yeah, big one. This isn't a temporary injunction. She had issued a temporary injunction before. Then they held a trial, a full evidentiary trial, and this is a permanent injunction. So obviously, you can bet they'll be heading to the Supreme Court, but it's a big win for us. It's a big win. Look, there are good people, there are good people all over America who hate this. Some of them were appointed by Donald Trump, and I know he doesn't like it because to his view, the only good is loyalty to him personally. But Dave, Americans are not eager to give everything up for this man, even people he appointed. And I hope that stands true of the Supreme Court, too. That is going to be tested now.
Yeah. Hey, I'll close on this one. Kind of a feel-good one is at Regal Theaters on Veterans Day. Does more than support Blockbuster. For one day, every popcorn sold helps life-changing programs for veterans through the Gary Sinise Foundation. They're turning a bucket of popcorn into real support for real heroes. And on this coming Veterans Day, most people expect tributes, flags, speeches, and free meals. But this year, one of the most meaningful ways to support veterans won't happen on a parade or on a podium. It'll happen in the dark of a movie theater. And
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, because that the Sinise Foundation, what they're going to do is like every bucket of the popcorn, they'll donate $1 directly to helping build specially adapted smart homes for severely wounded veterans, fund mental health support for military families, and provide equipment and training for first responders, stuff like that. So
I'm so glad you brought that up because, look, this is what I was talking about with other guests earlier. In this moment when the federal government is really teetering on the brink of falling apart because of the shutdown and the stresses that it was already under because of DOGE, we need to be taking care of each other. We need to be taking care of each other. It's the most important thing that you can do right now because our government is not doing it. Now,
hey, Edwin, you think with Trump, where he seemingly likes to copy the French from back then, like with the parades and with the gold leaf and whatnot, and then how he's been, like you're talking about how this had that stupid meal even. You think these the people are going to wise up and kind of do like they did to Louis XVI? see him finally?
Well, I hope we do not end up there. I really do. I mean, my gosh, that was terrible. And, revolutions are not healthy. Terrible things happen. I know young people are impatient and they think everybody older is didn't get it and sold them down the drain. But violent revolution, which is what they had in France, led to a reign of terror and blood in the streets, and it was awful, and I don't want that. And, if we get to the point where we are angry like that, this man is going to send the U.S. Army in to attack us on our streets, and that is unthinkably bad. Unthinkably bad. So, no, I don't think we're going to end up there.
If nothing else, Tuesday showed that these same probably 18-year-olds or 18 to 29-year-olds that had voted for him last time maybe wisened up a little bit in those states,
It indeed did, Dave. And
the males, especially 18-year-old males. Yeah. Yep. Anyway, let me clear out so others can get through it. Thanks again, Edwin. And
thank you so much.
Have a good week. Be well.
You too. All right, everybody, I'm taking your calls at 773-763-9278. Ron, hello there.
Yes. Yesterday, Trump commuted us into the Republican convicted of corruption. He usually does something like this on a Friday afternoon before he goes off to play golf.
Yeah, it's almost not news anymore.
No.
I mean, no one has abused the pardon power ever like he has. But, of course, no one has abused any powers like he regularly does.
Yeah.
It's, and we can't get used to it, and I'm glad you brought it up. We have to continuously be shocked and appalled and to say this should not be acceptable behavior in the United States.
And how can he explain that he wants to give $40 billion to Argentina and nothing for SNAP's benefits? Can he explain that?
No.
No.
Can anybody explain it? Yes, sure. Some of his friends invested in Argentina, and their investments were in trouble, and he needed to bail them out. But does it have anything to do with what's good for the American people? No, zero. None. Nothing. Is there any evidence that he cares about what's good for the American people? Same answer. None, zero, none, nothing.
No. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right.
You bet, Ron. Thank you. Greg, where are you calling from?
Yeah, hi, Edwin. This is Greg. I'm calling from Lake in the Hills.
Oh, great. Thank you for calling, and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks a lot. The reason I'm calling is one of my thoughts on trying to do something like we had the big No Kings March and we had the previous march, and what I saw on MSNBC was the original march was a certain level, 5 million. The next one was 7 million, and the next one is projected to be even bigger. And this is they said that this is an established. They've looked at history and movements. And movements move in this similar fashion in terms of growth. And so they firmly believe that the next level is getting close to the this was on Rachel Maddow's show recently, about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, because she only works one day a week now. But anyway, I thought that was a good thing. But in thinking with this, I'm worrying about the interim time and what we might be able to do. And here's one out of left field a little bit. If you got 2 minutes,
let's go.
There's a writer that I know of. His name is Jerome Doolittle. He passed away 2 years ago. In his former life, and where he got his big start in business after leaving the military, he worked as a speechwriter for Jimmy Carter. And he was always kind of a little bit negative about that because Jimmy Carter did something that he was looked down upon for doing, which was he prevented the U.S. team from attending the Olympics, I believe it was.
That's correct.
And the reason I bring this up, okay, first of all, Jerome Doolittle wrote some really good books with his main character. His name was Tom Bethany. And he was a private eye, like in the vein of Spencer, if you know who I'm talking about. But anyway, that's a little bit off the topic. But here's where I'm going with it. wouldn't it be nice if we could do something similar to Jimmy Carter, where he said, you guys can't go to the Olympics, something you've been preparing for all your life, and maybe get Roger Goodell to cancel the football season until something gets done. You think Roger Goodell would be a real American and, say, yeah, I like America more than I like, I like to return to what used to be in America so that we can go on enjoying the NFL. Maybe that would piss enough of the NFL fans out there who would maybe join to the extent that they not already have the 7 million people out in the streets. What do you think about that?
I think I don't think it's going to happen. I think the NFL did something. And look, I am out of my cultural depth here because I really don't understand this. But the NFL seems to have said that the singer at the Super Bowl is going to be a guy named Bad Bunny. And that is completely infuriated the right wing and some of these NFL guys. And so they're willing to go to do some things for sure. And that's a signal. I think we won't need that, and I hope we don't need it. I mean, Americans do need distractions, not because we should be distracted from politics, but because the toll on our soul of watching this great country be destroyed like this is so great that people like me, this is what we think about like all the time. And so it's helpful to have some other things to take our mind off it for a moment so that we can come back and fight harder. So I hope,
a good, it's a very, very valid point. I agree. Yeah. I just keep looking for something that would be enough where, like, that was really a rallying cry when Carter did that, because it pissed a lot of people off. I think Jimmy Carter, I highly respect. I'm not anti-Carter. I think Jimmy Carter was one of the best. But I keep thinking of what could be done that would be big enough, like shutting the airports down.
Well, Donald Trump is doing it for us. He's doing it for us. Yeah. He's going to make people hungry. He's going to get rid of people's health care. We can't, 250 million people are traveling every day, and now they all have, like, delays. And that's all on him.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't like the way it's being done, but in some ways it's almost like saying, okay, let the Democrats go in and give in, and then let's see the people out here, including myself, have everything jacked up. But I think by that time, if the Democrats allow it to happen, this guy's going to have everything. And that's what I worry about.
We're not going to give it. Democrats are not going to give in, but he is. But just to be clear, the cost of that is this man is destroying the country. And the federal government, it serves an enormous purpose, and we are all finding out he canceled that tunnel project from New Jersey to New York, and what the New Jersey voters said, I don't care if the polls say this election's close, you're going down for that. He fired hundreds of, tens of thousands of government workers who live in Virginia, and the Virginians said, you think this is a red state? Not anymore. Americans are woken up. The question is, will we survive long enough to get through this together? And that is not a question for the government anymore. It's a question for all of us if we'll take care of each other enough to get there.
Exactly.
And I'm betting we will.
Exactly, Edwin. I agree with you 100%. I had just one last thing for you. In circling back to the beginning, the writer, Jerome Doolittle, I highly recommend a really good book that he wrote, and this is from the 80s. It was called Bear Hug. And it's because his main character was a wrestler. That's where,
Yeah.
And I tell you, it's a great story because it ties in with the savings and loan crisis, and this guy tracking it down for a bunch of old retired guys who lost all their money. It's a great story.
I like that for a lot of reasons. Novels are important, but as I said before, and the subject matter of that is important, but we all need a place to refresh our souls as we stay engaged in this fight. So thank you for bringing me a novel.
I read that book 3 times, and I enjoyed it every time. And I'm telling you, it's a feel-good story because it's the little guys, these old retired guys, that he found out about, and he went to bat for them, and he went and found out where their money was stolen, and he got their money back. Yeah, people might think it sounds a little corny, but it's well written, good character. He's about 8 books in the series, but just passed away 2023. Great author.
Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate it. Take care out there. All right, Dan, you are next, and you might be our last caller because we are running up against the clock. So where are you calling from, Dan?
I'm calling from Indiana, Edwin.
How are things in Indiana?
Well, I'd like to be elsewhere, but for the moment I cannot accomplish that, but I'm working on it. My comment, Edwin, is going back a couple of callers, and also what you said, as far as how far do we go as a country? How far do we let this go before we stand up? And when you mentioned the ballot boxes and, of course, the election that probably won't be, at what point? I mean, I understand you're not advocating violence, but the way this country was founded was violence. And if it has to be, it has to be. We're looking at the abyss here, Edwin, and you know it. You know it as well as I do. I'm just saying, at what point do we finally say enough? Is it the election? Is it shooting our people on the streets? At what point do we wake up? You know, the people in this country, there's 500 million guns in this country. They're not the only ones that have guns, as well as the military, in my belief, once they see the tide turned, will join us. And I just like your thoughts on that.
I appreciate the question, and it is an important question. And let me answer it the only way I can, which is to say the premise, when will American people say they've had enough? And I want to say to you, Dan, that American people have said we've had enough. We have crossed that line. Millions of us are showing up at protests, and when we have a chance to vote, as we did last Tuesday, we are showing up in huge numbers and voting. And these are not, traditional Democrats. The numbers of people who voted for Democratic candidates in that last election, or who voted on the proposition in California, this means that Republicans, independents, people who don't have anything to do with political parties are deciding to vote and deciding that their vote matters. So
what if we can't vote anymore?
Well, hang on, I'll get there.
What happens when you can't vote?
I promise I'll get there.
Okay.
So we have passed the point where we have said enough. Now you're asking me if, having said enough, having said this is not who we are, this is not what we want, they stop us from voting. They stop voting from matter. They do what Trump said he would do in the Oval Office with Viktor Orban yesterday, which is to say, yes, let's change the rules so that we can never lose. He said that. And the answer to that comes from Abe Lincoln. We do not want war. We do not want this at all. As Lincoln said, one side would make war, the other side would accept it, and the war came. If he makes war, we will accept it, and we will be in this terrible place. And like the last time that one side decided to make war, the side that accepted it kicked their ass. You know what? And that's what will happen if they decide to make war on America. But I pray that we will never get there. I pray that since Americans have already crossed that line, and we have said don't do it, that by peaceful means we will restore our democracy so that it works for Americans again and makes our lives better. But if you're asking me the doomsday case, if he follows through on the things he is saying, what will happen? What will happen is and they will lose. That's what will happen. But it'll be awful. Let's not go there. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. And I thank all of you for being part of this conversation. Keep the faith. Stay working out there. Keep your souls fresh. Take care of each other. Take care of each other. Take care of your neighbors, because our government isn't doing that right now. It is in your hands. And you know what? I trust you. Talk to you next week.